We welcome you all to slow motion for this presentation of the Formula V Weekend Warrior Series, and we're about to grab the start in just a few moments' time. It's going to be Megan Overstreet leading them to green with Ladar right alongside. We're waiting for that green flag to come at, and the drivers are now on their way. Some of these drivers may be a little bit more aggressive towards the end of this race, as side by side with Love and DeGassis heading into 5.
It's close. It's a bit treacherous on the corner. Rex is just singling run wide there, Ron.
Down the running order, Love and Brewster, meanwhile, they have been in the tow and they've seen all these drivers try and do their own maneuvers. They definitely have something cooking behind the wheel of those FV race cars. As Montgomery gets that move done, one's running at the back. Well, not actually running right now, I don't believe, as there's a spinner with Ladar.
Oh, no.
Oh, and there's contact as well.
We are live for the first time on slow motion broadcasting with the FF Weekend Warriors. We're at Sebring this weekend. It's going to be a blast. I saw a little bit of rain here in the practice session, but we'll get to that here in 1 second. My name is Adam Thompson. I'm joined in the booth by Randall McGrew.
With these three going right at it, we see you're getting really squirrely. There,
oh no!
Some contact. Oh no! Jurg and Antonio, the two Masters leaders, both with issues and now dropping down the order.
There's a dicing through the curbs. Our lead two. As that's Instaman just slossing it up the inside through McIntyre there. Beautifully done by the Icelandic driver as there's a big incident happened behind somewhere. Gonzaga losing a lot of places back.
Almost touching at that point. They're around there heading into the closing stages of the track. Not quite there yet. Heading through what I'm calling the horseshoe, but let's not get into my drawing skills at this point. Nothing but clear track ahead of them at this point, so no one should be able to interfere in that battle. Side by side, nearly had contact there. That's going to put Kabanka on the inside for this next hairpin. This could be what decides it, and he's gone right on the outside, actually trying to cover off the car. I do wonder if Barry is going to be close enough to potentially slipstream. They've got 2 corners left to go. This is penultimate one now. Barry right up close, 0.3 of a second. I'm not sure it's going to be close enough, 0.2 of a second. He's got to keep his foot on that loud pedal. Catches a little bit of a curve, but has Kabanka done it? Barry going to the inside, and Kabanka gets it.
The field in Castro's hands, and he's going immediately. Gets a good jump there over green, and he's pulling away. He is gapping early, even moving over to try to break up any sort of slipstream or help that inside line, making sure green has his hands full coming into T1.
George Chance, did Jason give Antonio just a little bit of a slow up? It doesn't look like it. Antonio down to the inside, hopefully going to be able to make this move. Oh, that was close.
Soto both coming very hot with a head of steam. Plava going up to try to move out of the way and give up the slipstream.
Here comes Gilliland.
Slow down. Gilliland coming in, going to try to challenge for this podium. They're going to go too wide.
Oh, no!
Oh, no! Gilliland and Plava come together. Gilliland's going to come back across the line in 4th place.
Quite going to get there. There's a little bit of a lock up there from the 46 car. He's gone deep.
Whoa. I don't know how everybody was able to get through that. That could have been absolute tea.
Well, hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Slow Motion Broadcasting, and welcome back to the Ray Esports Club Racing League. This is round number 2 for group number 1, coming to you tonight from Bathurst. My name is Ron Maunz, and alongside me working the comms and the cams is Joshua Wilkie. First up, as always, we have the Mazdas. We're coming to a track with a lot of unique flair. We've got possibly the most unique cars on the iRacing platform. There's really nothing like the Mazdas. There's really nothing like Bathurst either. So Josh, I feel like the word for tonight, at least during the first half of this broadcast, is certainly going to be unique.
Yeah, definitely, Ron. 100% this track might be one of the most unique tracks in the world, really. They would not make a track like this anymore. That's for sure. It's fast, it's dangerous, the walls are right there. It's definitely one of the most skilled tracks in the service. You are kind of a specialist around here, or else you're kind of struggling, and even if you're a specialist, you're gonna be struggling against that track pretty much for the whole race. So you're not only just racing the guys out there today, the guys and girls I should say, but you're actually racing the track as well this whole time. These walls will come up and bite you all of the braking zones matter. Pretty much every corner on this track matters, solely because if you mess it up, you're probably not going to have another chance at it. So we should have a really good race here today, and hopefully everybody can kind of keep it clean, and we'll have a good one, Ron.
Yeah, keeping our fingers crossed for a good race at a great racetrack. As you just said, Josh, Bathurst, Panorama, whatever you want to call it, it is a unique ride in the world of motorsports. Opened all the way back in 1938. It's only had one major change, that being the addition of the chase section, the chicane at the end of the Conrad straightaway that we're seeing Josh Justice go through right now. But it is a wonderful ride in the world of motorsports, really synonymous with Australian motorsports. And Josh, I think while we're in the midst of this qualifying session, currently being topped by Miles Crab, I'll pass it back off to you so you could do a little bit of a track guide for us.
Yeah, so this is definitely one of my favorite tracks on the service for sure. And, coming up, honestly, one of the harder corners on the whole track here, being the first and the last corner, they seem somewhat benign, but this is very, very important to get right and get down on the power as quickly as possible. They don't call it Hell Corner for nothing. And then you're going to be up the mountain straight here into the first bend. This is going to be probably one of your best opportunities on track to get a little bit of a draft, get up beside somebody, and make a clean pass into a corner that won't necessarily kill you immediately if you get it wrong. So Quarry Bend is going to be we're going to see probably a few battles going into Quarry here. Another one that's really important to get right. You kind of want to hug this corner and then get out nice as wide as you can. Not too much curb there because you will lose a little bit of time if you hit it a little too hard. And now we're getting into kind of the more technical stuff here. This is into the cutting and Griffin's Mount. Very important corner right here. Kind of counterintuitive as well. It sort of tightens, so you really want to tighten it up and get on the gas as, as early as you possibly can. Coming into the cutting here as well. Definitely a super tight spot. You're going to be line astern through here for sure. There's definitely no passing opportunity. In some officials every once in a while, you may have some joker who tries to get along beside you here, but it's always going to end up in death. This is definitely one of the scarier corners on track. In the Mazda, it seems pretty easy, pretty flat. Not really going to have to worry too much about the rear stepping out. And then probably the most technical spot on the track right here, coming down the hill. The braver you are through here and the closer you can get to the walls, you're going to find some time through here. That being said, it's a really good place to end your race as well, and not a good place to be trying to pass someone either. Into Forest Elbow here at the bottom, one of my favorite corners. Everybody always seems to get this one wrong. You really want to slow it down more than you think you need to. Get on the gas as early as you can and then all the way out to that wall on the edge. I believe they actually call that Forest Elbow because a bike racer in the 80s smacked his elbow on a tree as he was going through it, which is probably the most Australian name I've ever heard in my life. Coming down the longest straight on the course, this is tons of speed. You're going to see some really, really big crashes here every once in a while. We have kind of traditionally, and then another really good passing opportunity right here into, I believe this is the cutting, or sorry, this is, what is this one called? The Dipper? Am I getting that wrong? Sorry, the Chase, of course.
That right there is a Chase. There you go.
That's right, the Chase. Yes, the Chase. One of the most important corners on the track as well, again, because it's going to be a place where you can get a lot of passing done, and it's so high speed into it. And then again, into that last corner, one of the hardest corners on the track to get right and back across the line. So again, Ron, keeping the cars clean this entire race is going to be the key to this race. Just making sure you can finish it.
Oh, it certainly will be. Just trying to keep your nose clean, that's going to be such a big thing weighing on these drivers' minds when they tackle this 30-minute race that we have coming up here for the Mazdas. Of course, you got those newer MX-5s and the old spec Miatas making up the two classes that we have here from this section for group number 1, running around this 3.86 mile long 23-turn road course. It is a wild ride in the world of motorsports. Thank you very much, Josh, for that track guide. But waiting for this qualifying session to draw to a conclusion. Looking pretty good for Miles Crab in the 131 car, as it looks like he's going to grab the pole position for this race, pipping Michelle Squark, who's currently in P2. She won the opening race of the season at Road Atlanta for those MX-5s, while Seth Bowman took the victory in the Spec Miatas. I gotta say, Michelle, as much as she had a pretty good running at Road Atlanta in Sim, a matter of a couple of weeks ago. In real life, she recently had a little bit of a dust-up, if we're being completely honest. I think we actually have that clip that we're going to roll now here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, and I feel like all the action that you're going to be seeing here all throughout tonight's coverage. Should probably hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss out on any of the racing action. So here it was. This was Michelle heading her way through the final corner right now around Road Atlanta. It's such a wild ride in the world of motorsports, and a treacherous one as well, especially this time of year where the track conditions can get so cool and the glare as well. You can see, though, it was a major break and snappage heading down into the corner. A wild ride for Michelle Squirk. Believe me, I have been there before. A couple of years ago in my karting days, I had a front tie rod and pretty much an entire front suspension failure in my kart at about 70 miles an hour. Came to a stop in about 90 feet and racked my nuts on the fuel tank. But anyways, before we get into stories like that, let's go through the starting grid for the first race of the night. Miles Crabb going to be leading them to green in the 131 car, saying a 2-minute 35.731 qualifying time in the process. Michelle Squirk only 3/10 behind, joining Crabb on the front row. That's going to be Nicholas Johnson starting this race in third. Casey Knight in the number 210 car going to be starting in fourth. Then we have Josh Justice in fifth. Jacob Schilling starting this race from the 6th position. Steven Tiska going to round out your top 7. The first group that we have of the brand new MX-5 Cup cars. Starting from the Spec Miata pole is going to be Matt Thompson in the 8 car. Chuck Labano going to be starting this race in 9th in the number 12 car. The Canadian making his series debut, I believe. Andrew Love going to round out your top 10. Then we have Michelle Lynn, who we usually see in the Formula V. She's made the plunge here into the MX-5s, a fellow Philadelphia represent on this broadcast. And driver the number 44 car going to be starting this race in 11th next to hometown hero Brad Cathcart, a staple from the Weekend Warriors series. Michael Snow going to be starting this race from the 13th position. Wayne Buttermore going to be starting from the 14th position. Brian Szynski, Ryan Campbell going to be starting at P15 and P16 respectively. Then we have John A. Casey in 17th. Joaquin Effinger starting this race in 18th. And looking through the rest of the starters that we have, mostly drivers who did not set a qualifying time. That list includes Aaron Bray starting this race in 19th, CJ Conklin starting this race in 20th, Jameson Huffman in 21st, Edgar Sancinelli in 22nd, and Mike Key rounding out the 23 car set to take the grid. Gotta say, Key and Labano, part of the same Frito Sport racing team. They are actually teammates in a series I do some race control with, so if they're tuning into this broadcast, must be very nice to hear me call the action instead of calling out some penalties. But right to get things up and rolling from the first race of the night, field in the hands of our pole sitter, Miles Crabb in that 131 car. It's a very short run until they get into turn number 1, but it's such a tricky section, especially at the beginning of the race. The green flag is out, and the drivers are on their way, heading their way now into turn number 1. Crabb looking to try and block off the run from Michelle Squirk on the outside line. Squirk, a real-life Mazda driver, trying to hold it on the outside of Crabb. They're going to be side by side coming out of hell corner of turn number 1 onto this straightaway for the first time. You can see that pack, that massive pack of race cars, and it looks like getting railroaded is going to be Miles Crabb. Did start this race from the pole. He's now finding himself in third, going to drop down to 4th behind Casey Knight, who are riding on board with in the 210 car. You can see him now side by side, still heading off into turn number 2. Nicholas Johnson trying to get a move done on Michelle Squirk to take the lead, but not successful. Joshua Justice, meanwhile, trying to get a move done on Casey Knight. They're side by side, about to head their way into the cutting for the first time in race conditions, but Squirk over Johnson over Justice, now running in third.
Wow, what a great start here so far on. We've had a pretty clean start. Everybody's a little bit of loss of position there for a couple drivers, but we're looking pretty clean so far. And honestly, getting through that first section nice and clean here and getting this first lap done around here is honestly, you can kind of just relax a little bit afterwards. Not fully, but you can relax just a little bit more if you can get this first lap done and the traffic spread out a bit. And it looks like that's exactly what we're doing. So I would imagine we get a couple drivers here who find their legs and we get some battles going, and it's looking like a great start, Ron.
Yeah, some of these drivers certainly slightly less puckered than they were at the very beginning, doubly so considering the field has spread out a teeny tiny bit, still close up towards the front as Casey Knight and Joshua Justice nearly make contact, heading down the hill through the dipper into Force Elbow right about now. Casey Knight, who are riding on board with as Justice spins and hit the barrier, and that's going to be a near track blocker. Oh, that was contact with himself. I believe Schilling was the car that hit the stopped car of Josh Justice, riding on board with Michelle Lynn in the
He does the
44.
right thing there, got out of
Justice
the way.
backing up. He had to pull off a J-turn to get that car out of the way. That's the thing with a racetrack like this, Josh. You have moments like that where a driver loses control. Justice overcooking it into Forest Elbow, bonks it on that Falcon tire barrier, and then just nowhere to go. That, I believe, was the number 85 car of Jacob Schilling. Justice trying to reverse out of harm's way. Looks like he got it out of everyone's trouble. However, he's now down in 20th. Hopelessly have contention with some damage as well, as Aaron Bray with a big curb whack heading through into the chase. He's running in the 15th position.
and
Gonna
he's
go
off
off
the
the
road.
track though. He's gonna be a sitting duck, as most of the field gonna try and get a move done on him. He certainly picked up a slowdown as a result of that, but a very hectic second half to this first lap as Squirk completes it.
Yeah, it looks like we spoke just a little bit too soon there, but honestly, pretty minor considering where Joshua actually spun the car there. For it to turn out that well, it is actually pretty good. If you're not going to get away with a spin there without 5 or 6 cars collecting you usually, and he really did the right thing actually by just letting the car roll backwards and then kind of just pulling off the track when it felt safe to do so. So unfortunate that he asked a little bit too much of the rear end there. Like I said, that corner, we're going too wide into T1 here. Looks like we're going to go single file again. Thought a little bit better of it for now, but yeah, getting back to that there, one of the harder corners, Forest Elbow, to get right. You really got to get on the clappers just right going into there, and it looks like, yeah, it's just a little too much of the rear end of the car.
Ooh, as we see this fight going on between Michelle Squirk and Nicholas Johnson, heading their way off through the cutting, now up the hill through Quarry Corner. Gotta say one thing as well that we have neglected to mention thus far on this broadcast. Technically speaking, this is a street circuit. It's certainly a modern, I say modern, still has that old school flavor to it. It's still a racetrack, though. You got some gravel traps like the one that's going to be outside of turn number 10 that these drivers are about to run through in just a couple of moments' time. But it is still technically a street circuit, so it's very narrow and pretty much no room to run or hide, especially if you make a mistake. The only place to hide is going over that concrete barrier and having a really rough ride down the hill, because believe me, go over those concrete barriers and you're going to be in for a world of hurt. Look at some side-by-side fighting here. This time in the Spec Miata lead. This is Matt Thompson, the number 8 car. We're following him right now, currently running in the 7th position overall, top of the drivers in Spec Miata. However, he's got chase down going on between himself and Chuck Labano. Labano really setting it full commitment, heading out of Skyline down the hill through the Dipper, and that is such a tough section in any sort of race car around this racetrack. You're pretty much just going through there puckered the whole time, holding onto the steering wheel and trying not to hit one of those barriers or get loose. Sometimes it just feels like you can lift off the gas and the brake at the same time, clutch and coast downhill, and you will still be terrified for your life. But Labano closing, you can see that slipstream in these Spec Miata race cars. They're going to be side-by-side hang into the cutting, and that was a pretty convincing maneuver from Chuck Labano in the number 12 car to slip his way up into 7th overall and into the lead in the Spec Miata category.
Yeah, that was quite the closing speed he had on the other driver there, on Matt Thompson. That was I'm not sure if that was pure draft or if Matt Thompson missed a shift or let off the gas or something there, but that closing speed was wild. So lots of draft coming down that back straight into the chase, where you're going to have some pretty good opportunities to pass another car for sure. Looks like the rest of the field is kind of spread out, like we were saying before. Even in officials, when you get into this track, you really are fighting the track, and you have people who are sort of specialty around here, and they really can extract that time getting millimeters close to the wall, and you have other people who just kind of can't get that speed out of the track, and we're going to see it kind of spread out like this, I think, all night. We'll see how the TCRs race around here as well, but I think maybe by the second race here, we will have a little bit more closer racing. That being said, race is still very young here, and we got lots of packs forming out there, so we'll see how it goes.
I gotta say, this race is, as you just said, Josh, very, very young, but we do have a little bit of attrition to touch on. Bray has now left the session. He was a driver who we saw have a big curb whack heading through turn number 20 into the chase not terribly long ago. Gotta take a look at a replay of this incident involving the driver of the number 22 car. You can see Justice on the inside, lots of damage on that car. Both of them have had to come back to pit lane, and that's the reason why Justice going for a move into turn number 10, and that with the damage he had on his race car, pretty much no downforce or no grip at all. I mean, Josh, he is a very nice guy. We've had him on these broadcasts quite a lot. Had him just 1 week ago, but that sort of maneuver, that is a desperate one from the driver, the number 99 car. Sadly for Bray, he gets caught up in the crossfire, both of those cars. Actually, only one of those cars going to be out of the race. Bray has left the session. Justice has rejoined the track, albeit down in 20th, well farther back of Campbell, who's currently the last running car of the drivers who aren't just in a completely different zip code compared to Justice. So that's tough. I think a little bit unnecessary as well, especially at the beginning of this race. But again, there's a very good reason why we're in the commentary booth instead of behind the wheel. Sometimes racers will go for some moves. Sometimes they may be a little bit questionable. Sometimes they work out. Sometimes they don't. That was just a case of one of those times where it just didn't work out at all.
Yeah, that's a spot on the track where honestly trying to go too wide through there is just not a good idea. It just never is. I would imagine that Josh was going to look at that later on and be like, yeah, that was kind of silly that I tried to go up the inside there. That being said, we're not in the car, right? Maybe the car in front of him was acting really slow. He needed to get around him. We don't really know, but unfortunately, that's kind of 2 cars out of the race now. So, yeah, we will see how it goes. Hopefully, we can have a little bit less attrition going further here.
And on the subject of bad attrition, we have 2 more drivers that are out of the race, albeit they didn't even take the start, that being Sancinelli and Jameson Huffman. So not sure why they did not take the start. They were registered for a very brief period of time. However, they decided not to take part of this race as we see a side-by-side fight continuing here. This is between Jacob Schilling and the number 85 car, who has a little bit of damage as a result of that contact with himself and Josh Justice coming out of forced elbow on that first lap. He's now going side-by-side with Tiska, heading down that straightaway off into turn number 12 in just a couple of moments' time. Turn number 2, my apologies, of Griffin's Bend. Tiska on that inside line, the number 5 car trying to outbrake Schilling. Gonna get that job done to slip his way up into the final top 5 spots. However, they have completely lost touch of the cars a little bit farther up the road. Casey Knight running in 4th is pretty much, 13 seconds farther up the road, and she's actually involved in a fight between herself and the pulsator of Crab, who's not had a very good start to this race in the 131 car. Started from the pole, kind of got hung out to dry, heading down that straightaway between 1 and 2 for the first lap, and then ever since then, he has been on the back foot, and the front 2 of Johnson and Squirk have pretty much entirely checked out compared to these 2 battling for the final podium position. But still, P3 result for Miles Crab. He won't turn that down one bit. However, he's still got about 2/3 of this race left to go.
Yeah, for sure. Around Panorama, like we keep mentioning there, it's not over till it's over around here for sure. You make one little mistake, break a little bit late once or twice, especially coming down the hill. It's so easy to just lose the car and just end your race. You make one little mistake and you're in the wall pretty hard almost everywhere around here. So I think a lot of these drivers have probably driven around here, quite a few times, and you kind of just start to not really see those walls or think about them anymore. You can get close to them, and it's sort of like, I'm a snowboarder from back in the day, and we used to say, if you don't look at the tree, you won't hit it. As soon as you look at the tree, you hit it. You want to look at the gaps in between the trees, and you just kind of magically make it in between the trees then. It's kind of funny that as soon as you look at it, you hit it. And it's sort of the same thing around here as well. If you look at those walls and you're too scared of them, you just end up in them for some reason. It's much better to look for those gaps in between.
It's like target fixation. I think that's the best way I could describe that, Josh. And honestly, I think I kind of had the same thing with some of the autocross stuff that I used to do. I occasionally bring this up on these broadcasts because a lot of the people who you will see racing all throughout this season are either current or former members of the Sports Car Club of America, aka the SCCA, and I am no exception. Got my 10-year membership pin back in March and did autocross in the karts for many, many moons. Whenever I'd look at the cones, I would be in for a world of trouble. That's part of the reason why I always autocross without my glasses on, which is not good because I'm pretty sure my left eye has like 20/50 vision. My left foot would work better as my left eye than my left eye would work as my left eye. However, one driver who I think has been left by the wayside is Tiska. We saw him involved in a battle not terribly long ago with Schilling. However, he's now dropped down the running order. Last time by set a 3-minute and 2-second long lap time, so I think there may have been something to happen to him. He's now running down in 13th, and Josh, here's a replay.
Yeah, I'll do a quick replay here. It looks like actually they both have a little bit of damage now, and that's just looped it. A little too much, asking too much of the rear end there. and just looped it, unfortunately. Really easy place to do that. That corner just begs you to go faster and faster and faster and brake later and later and later into it, especially when you're trying to pass somebody. And honestly, it's a pretty formulaic spin there into that corner, so unfortunate, but it looks like he'll get back on track, no problem. We also have a lead change out front here as well. They have been kind of battling back and forth, and I believe we have a couple other lead changes to get to as well here, if I can find some in the replays here. Looks like we have a bit of a battle between Michelle Lynn and Sen Conklin here as well, going side by side, and I believe Michelle Lynn's going to get this one done around the outside. Nice little move there to get that one done. And a couple more for
and there you can
here,
see
Ron, as we go.
And there you can see Tiska involved in that in the number 5 car. He actually got the 2-for-1 deal as he got past Michelle Lynn before they went into the cutting not terribly long ago. As we go back to the live action of Nicholas Johnson leading over Michelle Skork in that number 75 car, heading their way down into the chase through turn number 21 and 22. Very odd saying 21 and 22 in reference to corner numbers. Lots of corners around this racetrack as we take a look at another replay of some drama that we've had in this race. This was a side-by-side fighting between Johnson and Skork a couple of laps ago. There you can see Johnson just getting that move done, heading down the Conrad straightaway. Skork pulling into the drift. You can see they're nearly side-by-side. Holy cow, Michelle Skork feeling really racy and really resourceful, heading down into the chase. I keep trying to call that the backstretch chicane or the chase chicane. Nope, it's just called the chase. I don't like you calling it a chicane. They want you to call it the chase. But that was still full commitment from Michelle Skork, despite the fact she backed out of that near attempted overtake on Johnson as they went side by side in that replay that we just saw. That was still incredibly bold from the driver of the number 75 car. Still not game set match between these two drivers. Johnson and Skork have been trading blows like it's going out of style. They are currently running P1 and P2 effectively in no man's land as Miles Crabb is about 5 seconds back of the current leader of Johnson, as we're seeing another side-by-side fight flare up between Conklin and Michelle Lynn for P12.
Yeah, so obviously we know these two cars are in different classes, and Ron, maybe you can help me out with this. Are those points going to matter for Michelle Lynn if she ends up in front of Conklin here, or are they just racing in each other's league? I'm not actually familiar with that in this one, and I'd be a little bit surprised actually if Lynn was able to put it to the Waffle House car here. We know those the lower spec Miata is a little bit slower as well, so it kind of surprised me if he was actually able to catch Conklin here.
You are going to be testing my knowledge here, Josh, and I do not believe I have the answer for that. I mean, the Weekend Warriors series, which you can catch every single Saturday and Sunday here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, I believe that is just judged overall, but I think here, considering it is technically two separate classes of vehicles, I think it may be judged a little bit different. We'll have to circle back to that before the next broadcast of this series.
Right,
the next broadcast where we have two separate, I say two separate cars running on the racetrack at the same time won't be until December 18th to be a bit more precise. The next time this Group 1 is going to be running here on Slow Motion Broadcasting for the Right Esports Club Racing League. However, we will look to try and find that answer in the not too distant future to make sure that we all know what's up to speed in terms of these interclass battles. However, it's still pretty interesting to follow with these classes because in our time covering the Ray Esports Racing League, the Tuesday night series that was broadcasted on another broadcaster, who we will not mention by name, we kind of saw both of these cars running as the Mazda representation in that series. When I first started, it was the MX-5s running out there on the racetrack, and then for the final season of that series, back during the spring series for 2024, switched over to the Spec Miatas, and back then, they drove quite different. I believe now they are on just about the same tire model, possibly. I'm not sure if iRacing has gone around to putting that old Spec Miata car on the same tire model. I know they have the same damage model nowadays because iRacing did all of that with the damage. But I will say one thing, just the driving style and the driving technique that these drivers have to use to drive either the MX-5 Cup car or the Spec Miata, it's a 9-day difference. You have to use, it's a stick shift with the old Spec Miata race car, so you gotta heel toe, gotta use the clutch pedal, heading into some of these corners, downshifting. I remember before the spring tour for 2024, there was a Ray Esports event, not being broadcasted or anything like that, with a lot of the drivers who you usually see in the Ray Esports Weekend Warriors world, and I was in there as well. I was running in the Spec Miata, and have it be known, even if I didn't have a broken shifter where the bracket had essentially just completely snapped in two, so whenever I downshifted, it just felt like the entire shifting apparatus, or whatever you want to call it, just moved forward about 1.5 feet. Even without that taken into consideration, driving that car is really tough just because the gears, I mean, for lack of a better term, the gears in the Spec Miata are a titanic pain in the ass, just from my personal experience. It's so tricky trying to go through. It feels like you're driving a truck, whereby you have to go from one ratio to another, essentially. It's so tricky trying to go through the gears, especially downshifting through some of the heavy braking zones that we have around this racetrack. So I think that could be the reason why we're starting to see that filter form between the MX-5 Cup drivers and the Spec Miata racers, which makes it even more interesting when we do have that occasional interclass mingling, as we just saw with Brad Cathcart currently running at 11th, getting passed by Conklin, who slips his way up into the overall top 10.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to see the two classes racing, and we did actually get an answer. So question asked, question answered. They are on their own point system, so they are not racing against each other for points, which makes a bunch of sense there. So now that we know that, makes a bunch of sense. It's not really worth it to really squabble with somebody over something like that if they're in a different class. It's better to kind of just let it go. That being said, we're all race drivers here, and it's pretty hard to do that. You get the bit between your teeth, and it doesn't matter if that car's faster. If you're drafting, you're probably going to go for it, but we should, that should definitely answer that question for us a bit, so that'll change the dichotomy of the race just a little bit.
Yes, I think because of that, we may see some of those Spec Miata drivers give a little bit, but when it comes to these battles, they are not going to be giving at all. Mainly this one that we're seeing right now between Thompson and Labano. These two have been running line astern all throughout this race. Haven't seen the Canadian of Chuck Labano really make a dive or anything like that, so I think the driver of the number 12 car exercising a little bit of patience when it comes to battling his competitor, but the Canadian running in 7th, running 2nd at the moment in the Spec Miata category. He has been kind of just driving this race with zen-like patience. The real question is, though, Josh, you think we're going to see Labano make a pounce on Thompson in the not-too-distant future, or do you think he's really going to wait this out until probably the last 2 laps?
Yeah, I think, if it was me, I'd be waiting until the last couple laps to make my move for sure. You're like we said before, you're racing the track around here, and if you have the pace on somebody like this, it's kind of silly to just get out in front and have that pressure for no reason when you can kind of run the pressure from the back. So I would imagine we're going to see him kind of, it looks like he might be making a move right now. No, we're seeing this kind of around the field here, up in the front as well as with Knight and Schilling, Knight and Crab as well, where they're just kind of bump drafting up the straight. And really that's just kind of smart. They're just getting away from everyone else behind them, and they're going to have their own little fight at the end. And I think that's what we're going to see here, Ron, is at least 3 separate packs of cars here are going to have a last lap battle, which is going to be really interesting for me to try to cover here at the end. So hopefully we will get some fireworks here near the end.
And hopefully the fireworks are going to be on track and not any that you may have with your graphics card on your PC. That would certainly not be ideal. Gotta say, we are seeing a little bit of a fight develop a little bit farther behind these drivers. Actually, as I mentioned, that Wayne Buttermore slowly reeling in the both of these drivers, so we may end up having to talk about Buttermore. There he is, the driver of the number 73 car, currently running in the 8th position at the moment. That would be 6th for the MX-5 Cup drivers, slowly but surely reeling in these two of Thompson and Labano. I wonder if he is going to act as a little bit of a pick with these drivers, a little bit of a thorn in the side, if you would, for either Labano trying to make a challenge on Thompson or Thompson trying to withstand any sort of challenge that Labano throws his way. But right behind Buttermore, about 5 seconds back to be a bit more precise, we have Tiska and Conklin, who I think we may see start to fight in the not-too-distant future. They're covered by about 1 second. Gonna see them appear out of Forest Elbow. Not as close as you'd really expect them to be, with about a second separating the two of them, but they are still close, so we may end up seeing a fight between those two drivers running in 9th and 10th. It may be a nice fight to keep our eyes on, I should say, between now and the end of this race. You can keep your hands on it if you want, but I don't believe computer monitors have actual realistic 3D graphics yet, so you can reach into your screen and grab some of these cars out of the screen. I gotta say, one driver who would certainly like to just grab one of their competitors out of existence would probably be one of these two. Nicholas Johnson is being hounded by Michelle Squirk. Michelle Squirk, meanwhile, off the back of a pretty dominant win at Road Atlantic to kick this season off, she's got a fight on her hands between herself and Nicholas Johnson. This is a really close fight between these two. They're still covered by about a half a second. Gotta say, Josh, I think probably the biggest gap we've seen between these two is maybe like 0.8 of a second. There's been nothing separating these drivers, seeing the creme de la creme rise up to the top. And in terms of their lap times as well, they're pretty evenly matched last time by. You can see that they were pretty quick. Best laps as well. They're just about in a class of their own. Johnson, less than 1/10 of a second slower than Squirk in terms of the best lap of the race. Squirk, less than 1/10 of a second slower last time by compared to Nicholas Johnson. So these two just pretty much evenly matched pace-wise. Gotta say, if Miles Crabbe was running up towards the front, I'd be curious what he could do in that 131 car, since he does hold the fastest lap of the race right now at a 235.893. It would have been a really interesting fight. However, Crabbe is currently running a little bit farther back, down 2 positions where he started in this race, about 4.5 seconds off of this pack. You could just barely see him in the back of shots heading down the Conrad straight away. But the fight is very much on between these two, Nicholas Johnson and Michelle Squirk, still covered by less than a half a second, teetering around that half a second to quarter of a second barrier, heading down into the chase for one of the last times in this race. Only 7 minutes left on the clock here, as I think we may see that fight involving Thompson, Buttermore, and Labano start to heat up.
Yeah, for sure. It looks like actually Squirk on that lap just lost a little bit of time coming down into Forest Elbow, but just managed to kind of claw it all back here by the time we're starting the next lap. So we're going to see these two fight right till the end for sure. I would imagine they're just kind of biding each other's time here until the end, when one's going to put up a big offense and the other's going to put up a big defense, and we'll see how it works out. And yeah, it does look like a little bit farther back in the pack here. We have Labano and... Oh, just as I say that, Buttermore into Forest Elbow hard, and unfortunately took a little chunk out of Labano there as well, which looks like he's very much broken up that fight with them. So we'll have to go back and have a quick look at what happened there. But once again, Forest Elbow knocking somebody out.
Yeah, that elbow turning into a haymaker for both of these drivers. Taking a look at a replay now to see what happened with Buttermore. He just overshot it massively, and then having nowhere to go is Chuck Labano. Pretty good evasive action from the driver of the number 5 car of Steven Tiska, who's one of the first cars to arrive at the scene of the accident. But right as I say that, though, Tiska heading wide through the chase, nearly collecting Labano again. So Chuck Labano, you could call his luck in this past lap. The filled-in snake pit at the zoo, he really has not had a pit to hiss in at all. Take a look at a replay of Steven Tiska in that number 5 car. Runs off into the dirt. Very similar to a mistake that we saw from him earlier on in the race. That's going to lose him out on a position in that MX5 Cup fight. So he will find himself 7th at the moment in class, 9th overall. Thompson, meanwhile, with a 6-second gap to himself and Chuck Labano. We may end up seeing Thompson take that checkered flag, the winner in the Spec Miatas. Knowing my luck, though, I probably just jinxed him. So Matt Thompson, I apologize in advance.
Yeah, well, hopefully not. Hopefully they get a fight to the end here. It looks like we have Andrew Love and Brad Cathcart, actually, who seem to have met each other on track here as well, and it looks like they might have a little battle before the end here as well in the lower spec class Miatas here. We have kind of fanned out a little bit after that incident, at least class-wise here, so we have a pretty good battle up front. Looks like we're going to, looks like, again, maybe Michelle made a little mistake coming down the hill. It looks like possibly Johnson's a little bit stronger coming down the hill into Forest Elbow, but honestly, it barely matters coming into the chase. It's just so long. She's getting an opportunity even this time around. Maybe not quite. As Johnson flicked the wipers there, which always means you are working the controls in the car, Ron.
Yeah, these drivers using everything at their disposal, to say the very least. Gotta say, weather not going to be a factor in the TCR race, I believe, later on, because just taking a look at the other weather forecast, as usually set up as following real life, it's pretty dry in Bathurst at the moment. Currently in the dog days of summer in Australia. Actually, no. I believe it would be spring down there in Australia, since it's fall up here in the Northern Hemisphere. But nevertheless, with that meteorology lesson out of the way, let's get back on track and talk about the racing here. These drivers covered by nothing. You can see it's a matter of inches separating Johnson and Squirk. Riding on board with Squirk, the driver of the number 75 car, won the opening race of the season at Road Atlanta. Is she going to try and make it 2 for 2? Will she be able to make it 2 for 2 is the real question, heading through the braking zone into turn number 2 for one of the last times in this race. Coming up to 3 minutes on the clock here, Josh, so I think this will be the I believe this is the second to last lap for these drivers, so come to the white flag next time by. So Johnson and Squirk going to give us a really hard fight, as it looks like they're going to try and dispatch of the lap traffic of Wayne Buttermore. That may drive a wedge between Johnson and Squirk, but Squirk very much so decisive, trying to get a move done on Buttermore, heading through Quarry Corner at the top of the hill of this racetrack. So Squirk having a little bit of a commitment or a send, whatever you would, on that move with herself and Wayne Buttermore, just trying to keep that fight alive between herself and Johnston.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this has got to be one of the worst tracks to meet lap traffic on. It's got to be one of the worst, and Wayne did a really good job of getting out of the way, and there goes Johnson. Unfortunately, just got a tank slapper coming down. Oh, wow, that was a bad one. We'll have to go back and have a look at that, but that's pretty much going to seal the deal for Squirk here near the end of the race. Attrition taking out the leader.
And that car is wrecked. I just saw it in the back of shot coming through Forrest Elbow. That was a big one for Nicholas Johnson, and that's going to ruin his race and ruin his chances. There you can see that contact, a tank slapper into that outside concrete barrier. That is not a forgiving section at all. You can see him just trying to carry as much speed as possible. That car is wrecked. It is ready for the scrap heap. Multiple bits of wall contact. Miles Crab now slipping his way up into second. Actually, you can make that Johnson now dropping down to fourth as Casey Knight in the 210 car gets a move down to slip her way up into the final podium spot. But Johnson with a crucial mistake from the lead of this race with about a lap and a half to go as well. He's going to be kicking himself with that mistake. Taking a look at another angle of this, that initial wall contact. That is what kicked all of this off. You could see Johnson, as we were running on board with him, that car was destroyed. And you could just see from the off-board shot as well, that car is wrecked. He's now come into the pits. So Nicholas Johnson wrecking out of this race from the lead, as his competitor of Michelle Squirk is on the final lap, about to head her way into turn number 2 for the last time in this race. Johnson with a heartbreaker.
Yeah, that's too bad. Unfortunately, iRacing didn't give us much of a preview there of what actually happened. It didn't really wind the replay back far enough so we can see maybe what led to that. But if I had to guess, it was just a little bit too much speed coming into there, maybe brake a little bit late. And it's just so easy around here, like you said, you know, if you just happen to glance at that tree, boom, at the very least you're going to touch it and get your glove snagged off. And unfortunately there he got his quarter panel in the front of his car ripped off. So yeah, that's going to be an unfortunate one for him in the pit, and that will end his race and just hand it over to Squirk here, who's been able to keep it clean throughout. And looks like we got Miles Crab is about almost 6 seconds behind here, so done a pretty good job getting out front as well. And I think that would have to do also with Thompson drafting and pushing each other and stuff away from Miles, as we do know he did have a pretty fast lap around here, so it's actually kind of interesting to see that he's this far back in the pack after the race here. But we can get back to Brad Cathcart and Andrew Love here, who are definitely still going hammer and tongue.
Oh, and you can see Love carrying a lot of speed in through the corner, getting dangerously close to that outside tire barrier coming out of the final corner. Hit that shark tooth curb on the outside line. Cathcart, the Aussie, looking to try and fight back heading into turn number 1. Not close enough for the time being, but Love overcooking it. I gotta say, Andrew Love must feel incredibly lucky the fact he avoided any sort of major drama. Maybe lost out on a little bit of time. Still got that move done on Cathcart to slip his way up into the final top 10 position. However, he has very much got a fight on his hands on the final lap of this race. Michelle Squirk, though, I believe she's about to come across the start-finish line in a couple of moments' time to take the victory in this race here at Bathurst and make it 2 for 2 to kick this season off. A win that looked like it may have been on the cards. It was going to be a heads-up fight between herself and her main competitor ever since the drop of the green flag earlier on. However, sadly, for the driver who she was battling with, it just did not work out. So Michelle Squirk got across that start-finish line to take the checkered flag, the winner here at Bathurst for the MX5 Cup. Driver, she takes the win overall, takes the win in class. Miles Crab going to finish right behind in P2. Casey Knight going to round out your podium in third. Nicholas Johnson was that driver she was battling with. Going to finish well farther back in fourth. Gotta say, he is very happy about the fact the field is as spread out as it is. Otherwise, it would have been a far worse result for the driver of the number 16 car. That's a heartbreaker as well. He was running in the lead. However, heading through this section, a small low mistake just ended in an absolute catastrophe for him. But as we look at a fight continuing here, this is Thompson, who is going to have a few more corners left to go to take the victory in the Spec Miata category. Chuck Labano was really the only driver who's going to keep him honest ever since the drop of the green flag. But Labano, with a little bit of contact, he has dropped back like a rock. His pace has suffered. It's got damage on that race car as well. So Thompson going to be fairly uncontested towards the end of this Mazda Mania race here for race number 1 for group number 1, round number 2 at Bathurst. Thompson coming out of the chase for the final time, careening his way into the final corner. For the final time in this Mazda race, Matt Thompson in the number 8 car going to be victorious in that Spec Miata category. So well done to Thompson. You have to wait a little bit for Labano to finish behind Gase, Conklin, and Tiska, separating those two drivers running P1 and P2 in the Spec Miata category. There you can see Labano finishing well farther back from the driver of the number 8 car, who is his main adversary all throughout the race. Andrew Love taking the same line that he did, and we may have a photo finish on our hands between Cathcart and Love. Cathcart takes it when everything is said and done.
He's gonna wait for him.
Love making the same mistake, heading off into the final corner. Same mistake 2 laps in a row. Love overcooked it. This time he hit the barrier. And so as a result, Cathcart ends up taking that final top 10 spot. Let's take a look at the replay here, Josh. I knew it was going to be a photo finish when I saw that 945 car of Andrew Love make wall contact. And look at Cathcart, the Aussie, the hometown hero, swiping in to have a hero's finish for that final top 10 spot.
Yeah, that's so unfortunate. You know, like I was saying, you know, in the run-up at the beginning of the race, those, you know, the first and the last corner on this track are some of the hardest corners. It's just a hard one to make, and unfortunately, it just caught him out on the last lap there, which is really unfortunate. But it looks like Brad Cathcart was able to monopolize on that and jump up a position. So a little bit of fireworks at the end there, Ron.
Yeah, tiny bit of fireworks towards the end of that race. I think the main fireworks, though, was Johnson, the at one point leader of this race. The only driver we've seen thus far in the Mazdas to really give an honest fight to Michelle Squirk, making that mistake heading through the dipper. And it's such a heartbreaker for the driver of the number 16 car, and you can see added insult to injury, rubbing salt into the wounds. And there you can see this added contact hitting that Falcon tire barrier on the outside of turn number 18 of Forrest's elbow, just adding more salt into the wounds for the driver of the number 16 car. Tough for Johnson. He was putting together a really solid drive, but sadly for him, things not really going to materialize, not getting the result that he probably wanted or needed, but nevertheless, he is still going to be finishing the race down in fourth. I think we'll get those results loaded up for you in just a couple of moments' time. Got a pretty tight turnover between these two races, so we may have to get a hustle on our hands. Michelle Squirk going to take the victory. Miles Crab going to finish in P2. Casey Knight going to round out your podium in third. There we have Nicholas Johnson finishing in a heartbreaking P4. Jacob Schilling rounding out your overall top 5. Matt Thompson taking the win in the Spec Miata category. Conklin finishing in 7th. Steven Tiska finishing in 8th. Chuck Labano in 9th, Brad Cathcart in a squeaker between himself and Andrew Love rounding out your top 10. Then we have Michelle Lynn in 12th, John Casey in 13th, Brian Szynski in P14, Ron Campbell in 15th, Joaquin Effinger finishing this race in 16th, Mike Key in 17th, Wayne Buttermore finishing this race in the 18th position. Some of these drivers towards the end of the results ran into some major difficulties, mainly the case of Mike Snow, Edgar Sancinelli, Joshua Justice, Aaron Bray, and Jameson Huffman. Some of those drivers did not take the starts. Some of them had some difficulties, but nevertheless, they all end up multiple laps down in this race. And now, Josh, we've got some drivers waiting in the interview waiting area. Who would you like to have a chat with?
A winner here probably, and have her come down and see if we can't get a little interview here.
That
Hey Michelle, how's it going? Great race out there today. Really unfortunate there right at the end. Thompson kind of drove it into the wall and you were able to just kind of rip past him with no real effort there. We were kind of hoping for a fight at the end, but you kept it clean, kept it fast out there and ended up a winner. How'd you do it?
Oh yeah, well this is going to be a little bit of an in-car interview because I'm actually practicing TCR for the first time
right
ever
on.
on the mountain as we're doing this. But yeah, so I just drew on a lot of my Beckham X5 experience there and just hooked up right to his bumper to try to pull away from Miles and Casey because I know they're quick. So if we got them right behind us, it would have been a four-way fight. So figured, hey, let's make this a two-car fight and make it interesting at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely looked like you guys were kind of biding each other's time a little bit. A couple other packs behind you as well, doing the same thing till the end. And they all sort of ended up in the same way where one of the cars, the attrition kind of took them out and the other driver was able to kind of skate away with the win or at least the victory over that driver. So pretty cool stuff today. Love the track. It's your first time in the TCRs. How's that feeling for you?
I was out in TCRs at Road Atlanta as well, but that flew under the radar quite a bit because I managed to throw it off into turn 6 in Lorraine.
Right.
But they're not exactly my cup of tea just because front wheel drive feels very weird.
I agree.
Throw that brake bias back and let the rear wag about and have some fun.
Excellent. Right on. Well, we'll be looking forward to the next race in the TCR and congrats on today's win. There's anybody you'd like to thank?
Absolutely. I want to thank Rays for putting on the series. Fantastic. A lot of fun. All you guys over at Slow Motion Broadcasting. Amazing work. It's been enjoyable to watch every one of them. As well as, obviously, Casey for letting me know about this series. And then some of my real-life sponsors, FRD and R-Speed.
Excellent. Right on. Thank you very much for the kind words there, and we'll see you in the next TCR. We did actually get to the footage of that rim failure in this episode there, so you can check it out at the beginning, and we're all glad you're okay there. And unfortunately, only the pocketbook and the race car took a little bit of a hit there, so we'll see you in the next one, Michelle, and congrats today.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And that right there was Michelle Skork, who for the second time for group number 1 takes the checkered flag, the winner in the MX5 Cup cars. And now we got a little bit of crossover between what's going on right now with qualifying about to start for the TCR race. So we're going to take a quick little commercial break here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. The Mazdas were fantastic. The TCRs are going to be exciting as well. So we'll be right back after these messages.
Through dip 50, slowing crest 40, 1 left. Caution to 2 right short to 5.
Introducing the Sim Motion Rally Sequential Shifter. Our shifter is specifically designed for sim racing enthusiasts who want to enhance their experience in the rally world using a push-pull system. Compatible with wheelbases like the Sim Magic Alpha series, V&M Direct Drive, Fanatic, and Simicube, and can easily be installed in minutes. It also has the adjustability to suit any wheel or driver's needs. It's also plug and play with titles like Dirt Rally, iRacing, and WRC. Available now at sim-motion.com. SimMotion has teamed up with iRacing and V&M Simulation with an extreme prize package for Season 4. To win, paint any car with a SimMotion logo, race in 10 official iRacing events, and you are entered to win an extreme direct drive and GT wheel bundle. But that's not all. Compete in the Formula 1600 Fixed Series, win your division, and you could score this set of pedals. Gear up and get racing. The rewards are waiting. With years of experience and a passion for customer service, SimMotion is a trusted name for SimMagic products. Whether you're just getting started or a seasoned pro, we have the gear to get you on the podium. At SimMotion, we don't just sell gear, we feel your passion for sim racing.
Alrighty folks, we are back with tonight's coverage of the Ray Esports Club Racing League here exclusively on Slow Motion Broadcasting, and you know, we just heard from them a couple of moments ago, but to make all of this racing action and these broadcasts possible, gotta have some pretty fantastic partners, and we've got them in spades because tonight's broadcast of the Ray Esports Club Racing League on Slow Motion Broadcasting is brought to you by SimMotion. SimMotion is a store by sim racers for sim racers, carrying everything from bun boxes and steering wheels and the best brands from the sim racing world, including SimMagic, Moza, Husenfeld, and many, many more. With decades of experience in the industry, SimMotion is a great choice for sim racers in both North America and Europe looking to upgrade their simulators. If you'd like to check out what SimMotion has to offer, go to us.sim-motion.com. That's us.sim-motion.com. SimMotion is not only the sponsor of the official Formula 1600 series here on iRacing, but is a proud partner of the Ray Esports Club Racing League, and feel free to use discount code RAY5 at checkout for some very sweet discounts. And you know, speaking of SimMotion and their very generous support making these broadcasts and this series possible, gotta say on the Racing Line podcast just the other night, Darren Ganchi from Sim Motion was actually one of the guests. So, Darren, if you're just so happening to tune into this broadcast, how was it being in that 4th seat? I remember being on there for episode 10 about a month or so ago. It was back in very early November. Used to do some Tuesday broadcasts, and in a small little break in that schedule, decided to get in there and bleed Stevie, Jason Green, and Josh's ear during that as he was subbing in for our SMB colleague Adam Thompson, who was in there because Uncle Sam was calling of his services. But you know, moving on from that, let's move into this qualifying session here for the TCR race cars. Currently at the front, it is the media member of Sim Motion broadcast, not Sim Motion. Oh boy, I'm all sorts of crossed up here.
That's a
Jim
hard one.
Sneddon
Motion,
is the
motion.
media guy at Sim Motion, who makes these broadcasts possible on Slow Motion Broadcasting. He's currently on the provisional pole at the moment at a 2-minute 19.951. So he's showing a whole lot of pace in that number 11 Hyundai as we see him at the top of the hill using all of the track available to him in the process.
Yeah, holy cow, just hustling down the hill here for sure, which is exactly what you need to do. A bit of a different story in these front-wheel drive cars, I would imagine. There, it's looking very direct and very on point with things, but you know, you're going to have your definite little differences for sure between a rear-wheel drive and a front-wheel drive car. Not something that I'm super ultra familiar with or even really super stoked about, but man, these cars race good, Ron. We've done a few different races with these TCRs, and every single one of these races just ends up being a pretty darn good race. So yeah, pretty looking forward to this one as well, and I can definitely say the guys there at Sim Motion do a good job. I've actually recently picked myself up some VNM pedals, and I gotta tell you, you know, they're not paying me or anything to say it, but they are probably the best pedals out there at the moment for the money and punch way above their weight. So you're looking for any sort of gear at all, Sim Motion's the place to do it for sure. But we'll move on here to, let's see, who is the closest behind here, who we think is putting in some good times. I'm feeling maybe Will Pierre here is going to actually move up the grid a little bit more on. Let's see if we can't jump on board for a lap with him.
Yeah, let's see if we can. The driver of the number 7 car, who was pretty impressive last time out at Road Atlanta, currently qualified in 5th. A little bit farther back of Sneddon, who's still on the provisional pole. He won that opening race of the season at Road Atlantic to kick this season off. So looking to try and continue that same pace here at Bathurst. A little bit spread out is this qualifying field. Looking through some pretty decent chunks of time separating some of these drivers all throughout this field. As we're seeing Pierre head his way down the hill through the dipper. This is such an awesome racetrack. That section of the track as well, terrifying as well. I mean, we saw it kind of bite Nicholas Johnson in that Mazda race earlier on, had a mistake heading through there and ruined his chances of what could have been a really solid result. But heading through that section, you're going through there at what feels like breakneck speeds, and it's a section of the racetrack where if you go a little bit awry, you could have a breakneck collision. It is such a terrifying section of the racetrack, but it's also a brilliant one whenever you get it right as well. Regardless of what kind of car you're running in, whether you're in one of these TCR cars, for instance, or whether you're running in something like, I don't know, the Delara Iro 1, for instance, which I feel like is about as far away from a TCR car as you can get on the iRacing platform. It's still such a very enjoyable experience and a really rewarding one as well when you get that section just nailed down to absolute perfection. But following Ian Anderson in the 147 car, the driver currently slotted P2 at the moment in this qualifying session. Sneddon coming down pit lane. Anderson not going to improve, so that's going to remain a P2 qualifying position for him. And he's not going to improve. He's towed back to pit lane, so that's going to be the end of his qualifying session. Following Kerry Anderson now in the number 78 car, currently qualified in the 8th position. Let's see if we're going to see any sort of improvement from them. Currently slotted in 8th at a 2-minute 22.030. You can see that red light flashing on the dashboard. That, I believe, is just the rev limiter going insane in this Audi. So we'll see this driver, the number 78 car, possibly improve it this time by. Looking like it's a pretty good lap thus far in terms of the sectors compared to Chuck Labano right behind in 9th. Coming around that final corner onto the start-finish straightaway, it's a 1-spot improvement and 4/10 of a second lap time improvement from Kerry Anderson to move up into 7th in front of Vos, who now drops down to 8th. Look at some more drivers getting some laps done. Here's Wayne Bartermore in the number 73 car, currently slotted in 26th. About a minute and a half left to go in this qualifying session, and Josh, as I've been bleeding your ear off over the past minute or so, I want to ask you if there's anything odd that's stuck out from the on-track running that you've seen thus far with these TCRs.
You know, the thing that kind of strikes me about these cars, honestly, Ron, that I was not expecting is that coming down the hill, they actually look really stable in the front. And I wasn't really expecting that. You know, you expect kind of a front-wheel drive car to want to understeer everywhere really badly and maybe not be so great on the brakes, especially coming downhill like that. But it looks like they're actually pretty darn straight as Buttermore understeers hugely into the chase here. Really easy to do there, unfortunately, and he won't be bettering a time this time. But yeah, you know, I will be watching these cars throughout this race here and trying to figure out exactly how they drive. I did actually pick one of these up, I believe, on the first round, and I'm yet to take it out for a spin, so don't really have a ton of technical info to talk about them, but it is kind of surprising me just how straight and narrow they seem to be.
I gotta say, though, honestly, TCR racing, most TCR experience I have in any sort of, it's not really a sim, it's Project Cars too, so I guess you could call it more so a racing game, but still, those cars in Project Cars 2 were always such a really fun experience. I remember doing lots of laps in the BMW. I'm not sure exactly what, I guess it was a 1 Series BMW. That's the other TCR equivalent, but it was still such fun running in TCR races, touring car racing. You know, back in the day, touring car racing was just about the biggest form of racing on the planet, just about as big as GT3 racing is today. So TCRs can put on some very good show. Usually see them in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge, which, funnily enough, we saw one of those drivers, Morgan Burkhardt, run in the Group 3 opening race about 1 week ago here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. So these TCRs can put on some really good racing. I'm going to see that put on full display here at Bathurst tonight. And speaking of, gonna get that starting grid loaded up for you in just a couple of moments' time. As you can see, that field begin to line up, about to get the pace lap underway. Starting this race from the pole is going to be Jake Snen behind the wheel of the number 11 car. Ian Anderson going to join him on the front row. Michelle Squirk looking to try and go 2 for 2 for this second round of this Group 1 season. Gonna be starting this race in third next to her Mazda sparring partner of Nicholas Johnson. Will Pierre in the number 7 car gonna be starting this race in 5th. Miles Crabb going to join him on that third row. Then we have Kerry Anderson in 7th and Dylan Vose in the 8th position. Chuck Labano going to be starting this race in 9th. Nolan Brahmer going to be starting this race in 10th. Casey Knight going to be starting at 11th. Tyler Heron in 12th. Looking through the rest of the drivers that we have in this pretty big field that we have for these drivers, we have Ryan Campbell in P14, Seth Spolman in 14th. We didn't see him in the Mazdas earlier on, but he won the opening spec Miata race of the season at Road Atlanta. Looking to try and have a similar result here with the TCRs at Bathurst. Then starting this race in 15th, we have another Aussie. This one being Jeff Bernard, I believe would be the correct pronunciation of that. The S may possibly be silent. Nevertheless, the driver of the number 13 car going to be starting in 13th alongside Carlos Lopez Jr. Matt Thompson going to be starting in 17th. Joshua Justice going to be joining him on that 9th row. Brad Cathcart and Paul Ellis going to round out your top 20. Then we have Edgar Sancinelli starting in 21st. Jacob Schilling in 22nd. Jason Grider going to be starting this race in 23rd. John Casey in 24th. Steven Tiska going to be starting in 25th. Tom Weint, I believe would be the correct pronunciation. My apologies if I got that wrong. Going to be starting in 26th. Wayne Buttermore in 27th. CJ Conklin in 28th. Joaquin Effinger in 29th. And Mike Key, the Frito Sport Racing driver, in the 998 car, going to round out your top 30. And round out your grid for this race. 30 cars. And we got that just in the nick of time. Right as I get through that last name, the drivers start this lap. 40 minutes, unlike the 30 minutes of racing action we saw earlier for the Mazdas. So with those added 10 minutes, Josh, do you think that's just going to throw a complete different mindset in these drivers' heads or what?
Yeah, I mean, 10 minutes can feel like an hour, you know, around a track like this sometimes if you're not super comfortable in it or you know, if you're being pressured by other cars and stuff like that. So definitely, Ron, you know, more time on the board is more time to make a mistake. It's more time to lose a position. It's more time to gain one. So it definitely will change things up a little bit today. And yeah, definitely the mindset as well. It's just, an extra few minutes there that you just have to keep her all together. So looks like we're going to get the start here, and I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. The green flag is out and the drivers are on their way. The field going to be scrambling, heading down into turn number 1. The field spread out quite a lot. I think there may have been a little bit of an incident farther in the back as 3 cars have already towed back to pit lane. Heard some calls about a checkup, so I think there may have been a collision on that formation lap, but as is just disjointed field, heads their way through turn number 1 for the first time. Leading this race is going to be Jake Sneddon, Ian Anderson slotted in P2, Nicholas Johnson running in 3rd, Michelle Skork losing out of position, Crab making a position up on Will Pierre, who's now dropped down to 6th, heading down into turn number 2 for the first time, though Sned's still going to be leading Anderson and P2s. We see a side-by-side go on. Banging doors is Dylan Vos and Will Pierre heading through turn number 2. They're still going to be side-by-side, heading into the cutting of 3 and 4 right now, turning, getting on the brakes, banging through the gears as quickly as they can, as that's a big off farther in the back for Nolan Brommer, I believe it was. Multiple cars going off the track. It's a pile-up, near pile-up, heading through turn number 4, riding on board with Edgar Sancinelli through that drama. I think he got away with it fairly scot-free. Casey Knight may have gotten a piece of that drama as well in the 210 Hyundai, but either way, a big amount of drama at the very beginning of this race, heading into turn number 4 for the first time.
Yeah, unfortunately, again, you know, this track, when you crash on the track like that or you spin, it just basically just throws up a wall in the middle of the track, and it's really hard for cars to get around. It actually looks like, you know, unfortunately, even though that happened and it is kind of hairy, it actually worked out okay, and most everybody got through it. I will see if I can't find a replay of that and get a little closer to the action for you guys here, but it looks like everybody made it through there fairly clean, even though there was a spin in the middle of it. So that's going to happen around here. It's something you have to think about, you know, on the first few laps especially. You're probably going to have to take some avoidance, and it looks like we're still okay here, although, man, there is a big gap between these two packs now, Ron.
Yeah, you could see this field spread out a little bit, but these drivers still going to be battling hard. They haven't even finished the first lap of this race. Been a very hectic start for a lot of the drivers in this field. Gotta say, Will Pierre has gone off to a somewhat hectic start, running in 6th at the moment, already down a position from where he started in this race, and coming into the pits at the very start of this race at the end of lap 1. So Will Pierre making that call to come into the pits. This is odd from me, Josh. I'm looking through to try and see if there's some sort of outstanding penalty for him. I don't believe there is, so Will Pierre just making that decision to come into the pits in the number 7 car. This is very strange. I'm trying to figure out what the deal may be for him, but a very hectic start to this race, as we may see some more drama as they come out of the chase. That's Joaquin Effinger in the 700 car, very slow in that Hyundai. I think there may have been some drama farther in the back, possibly involving Grider. You can see that car is ready for the scrap heap. Destroyed is that car of Joaquin Effinger, as we're going to take a look at a replay to see what happened.
Yeah, let's see if we can't catch up with some replays here, Ron. So it looks like perhaps Cathcart had an incident here. I'm not sure if this was coming up on that incident or if it was him who actually spun it. We'll have a good look here, and it looks like him just coming up on it, so that was an overslow. Unfortunately, we're not going to get any info right there. We'll go back another one here and see if we can't find. I think this is our culprit here in Nolan Brommer, and it looks like he's just going to have a pretty easy spin here. Very, very easy to do. Oh, got a little bit of help, actually. I believe that might have been Casey Knight who actually gave him a little tap there on the inside. Let's have a quick look from Casey's view.
Yeah, let's ride on board with her in that Squirk Motorsports 210 Hyundai, heading into the cutting for the first time. Maybe just, it wasn't even anything like majorly out of pocket for either of those drivers. Just a little bit of hard racing at the beginning of this race, side-by-side contact made. Knight going to get involved in that in the eyes of Bromer. It's probably a little bit of cosmic debt, if you would. That's still a heartbreaker for both of those drivers to have an incident like that befall them so early on into this race. It's going to catch out of some more drivers as well. It's been a pretty rough start for a lot of drivers up and down this grid. One driver hasn't gotten off to a very bad start, though, is Sneddon, as we see Vos. Was that a bunny hop from him heading through turn number 20? Cool. What in the world was that? Some aerial acrobatics for the driver of the number 19 Audi.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he got all 4 off the ground there for a second, which is always impressive. We had a bit of an SDK issue there, had to quickly reset, so unfortunately I will not be able to go back and grab any more of those replays as we got stuck in replay mode. which does tend to happen every once in a while with that program there. So unfortunately, won't be able to go back and see any more replays, but we are back doing just fine here now. You might notice as well here, it's looking like the timing is sorting itself out as people come across the line, so that will sort itself out shortly here. But yeah, some acrobatics there from Dylan Vos. That was pretty impressive little bunny hop there.
Yeah, that's a sort of tactic that I think I would see on like an F1 2014 lobby running around Montreal back in the day, using the bunny hop strat on those old Xbox 360 F1 games. That's an odd call to be sure, but I mean, hey, if it gets the job done, it gets the job done, and that is all that matters when everything is said and done for these drivers. Looking at some battles continuing all throughout this grid as we nearly see a little bit of contact coming out of turn number 4 for Ian Anderson. That was a megally close call coming out of turn number 4. He is getting really racy in that 147 car, and you know, we saw a little bit of drama before the start of this race, and Josh, I know you cannot find a replay, so I'll pass things back off to you for a little bit. I'm going to try and figure out what may have caused this field to be a bit disjointed at the start of the race.
Yeah, absolutely, Ron, for sure. It's, you know, as we were saying in the run-up to the race here, this place is, as you can hear in the background here, we're hearing cars kissing walls left, right, and center. You know, the pace to be found here is up close to the walls. It's braking late, just like any track, except when you kind of miss it here, you end up kissing a wall or touching a wall, and generally that's not going to work out for you. And like we've seen a few times now from a couple of the drivers there, even if you have kind of a, you know, what would be considered a fairly minor incident on some other tracks, can turn into a major one here and a multiple car pileup very quickly. So trying to keep it straight, keep it going, and just really fighting the track and making sure that you're hitting all your marks and hitting all those braking zones and getting those corners done, going corner after corner, you know, for the 40 minutes and just getting it all done is going to be the way that you move forward, I believe, here. Like we said in the first race as well, bit of a skill gap here again. We do have some fairly spread out packs here. Nobody's totally spread out, but everybody's kind of just out of draft, and this happens a lot around Panorama because you are racing the track so hard, and it is such a hard track to race on that, you know, you're just going to end up fighting the track most of the time. You're not worried too much about the guy in front of you unless he makes a mistake and you can get by him. So we'll see how it continues to go here, and we're kind of spread out a little bit. Probably the closest battle we have here is between I believe this is Conklin and Pierre out in front of him here, not too far away, and we know Pierre's got some pace, so we'll see how this one pans out. But that's about the closest battle. We got Wayne Buttermore actually here as well. I believe that's Jeff here from Australia, who we saw in the run-up as well, doing some quali laps there, who just got by Wayne. So yeah, some pretty clean racing out there so far. Couple little incidents blocking the track here and there, but unfortunately we're not going to be able to go back and have a look. Have you been able to find any info on that yet there, Ronnie?
Yeah, so I'm taking a look at this replay of all this stuff. That's the first time I've ever been called Ronnie on the air. Anyways, so looking at this was on the formation lap that I'm looking at, and it was Tyler Heron in the number 8, number 8 Honda that really kicked all of this off. Coming out of the chase on the formation lap, he jerked the wheels, trying to generate a little bit of tire temperature, ended up on the grass, lost it, lost control of his race car, spun into the path of the number 21 car of Chuck Labano. I gotta feel bad for Chuck. He's a nice guy. I've done some race officiating for some series in which he is still a part of in the past and present at the moment, probably into the future as well, but he has had such awful luck in his series debut. So it was those two cars coming to blows, and as a result, that Labano got bumped off the track into the tire barrier. Heron was then stopped in the middle of the racetrack, which was in a very narrow section where these TCR cars are probably can't even go 3 wide coming through it. And then piling into that was the likes of Josh Justice, Jeff Bernard, the Aussie, and the number 13 car, and then some more cars kind of stacking up a little bit farther in the back because of that parking lot. The field was quite spread out as they grabbed the green. That's part of the reason why we've seen some drivers come down pit lane. Lots of drivers running into some difficulties in the early stages of this race. But I think outside of that and the drama heading down into the cutting for the first lap of this race, it's been a fairly clean affair thus far. Knowing my luck, though, as I've been taking a look at this replay, someone's probably struck the moon.
Yeah, it looks like we're fairly clean here so far now. We've kind of spread out a little bit. There's a couple little fights going. We just had Will Pierre here just put a move on, I believe it was, tried to put a move on John Casey. Didn't quite work out for him, I don't think, here, but... Oh, no, actually, sorry. Let me fix that. Nope, that was Will Pierre on Carlos Lopez Jr., and he did get that move done into the chase, so that's a little position change there as well. We got Josh Justice kind of bringing up the back there and see if he can't get any pace. Maybe have a look at our last lap times coming through here and see if we can't make a judgment on if anybody's catching up here, or if we're just kind of lying astern for the moment. Yeah, it does look like we do have some pace differences here, so we should have some people kind of moving into some positions here shortly, Ron.
I'll have to wait and see if we're going to see a lot of battles continue to flare up between now and the checkered flag. 10.5 minutes into this 40-minute long race, it's still Sneddon leading over Ian Anderson, leading over Nicholas Johnson, who's in front of those two sparring partners in the MX-5 race. Johnson in front of his old adversary, shall we say, of Michelle Squirk. However, those two cars covered by about 4 seconds as we stand at the moment, just 1 quarter into this 40-minute long race. But seeing this race continue here, these drivers spread out at the moment, not seeing a whole lot of battling going on right now. This is Josh Justice in the number 99 car, and here's a fight involving Jason Grider. This is one of the cars that we saw checked up earlier on. I think he may have even got a piece of that drama during that formation lap. So the number 12 Audi running in the 24th position at the moment. May see a side-by-side fight between Grider and Effinger in the not-too-distant future. Saw Effinger come down pit lane at the very beginning of this race, so pretty odd affair thus far for the driver of the number 700 car. Running outside the top 20, but as we've seen many, many times in either the Weekend Warrior Series or some of the other Ray Esports Series, these drivers are still good battles. Effinger goes wide heading into turn number 2, locks it up, goes off the track. I think he picked up a little bit of suspension damage as well. That car does not look like it's driving well.
Yeah, I would imagine that kind of comes down to, we got Grider as well, just tapping the wall through there as well on the way up, giving it a little kiss. Looks like not quite as bad as Effinger here, but it looks like he's carrying around some front end damage, so that thing's just not easy to drive around here. And I can tell you the one thing that you don't want driving around Panorama is steering damage. You want to be as precise as you can and stuff around here. It's just going to make it a bit of a living hell, honestly, trying to get around here with steering damage like that. You get a little bit loose on the inside there for Anderson. We are definitely neck and neck here up front now, Ron, so we've got a fight on our hands, and it looks like we may even have Squirrett kind of catching up here to battle for second and third place pretty shortly.
That may be something we have to keep tabs on between now and the end of this race, but looking at the side-by-side action continuing here between the two drivers battling for the final 2 podium spots, Johnson and Anderson side by side. Looks like Johnson going to get that move done to slip his way up into second, as Ian Anderson in that 147 car continues to scrap in this race. Still running strongly though in the 3rd position. However, if they continue to go side by side, we may see Squirk get involved in this fight in the not too distant future. Certainly wouldn't rule it out. We've seen some stranger things thus far this season. We've seen some stranger things happen tonight, so I would not rule that out in the slightest, to have some more drama befall these drivers between now and the checkered flag. I think there may have also been a battle that we saw between Edgar Sancinelli and Will Pierre not terribly long ago. I think those two just swapped positions a couple of moments ago. Following Sancinelli, he's up 11 spots from where he started in this race. He's not the hard charger though, as the honor for the hard charger thus far is actually tied between John Casey and the number 25 car running behind this man of Will Pierre. He's up 12 spots along with CJ Conklin running well farther back in the number 30 car, running in 16th at the moment. There's Casey in the number 25 up 12 spots. Has the opportunity to make up some more spots between now and the end of this race. Certainly would not rule out that happening. However, as it stands currently, both Casey and CJ Conklin tied at 12 spots gained apiece. Still nicely played from the both of them.
Yeah, that's awesome, right? Definitely a place of attrition here for sure. If you can keep it clean, you're going to gain some positions, but not usually that much. So they are definitely pushing it out there and making some passes for sure. But to gain 12 positions in any race is a definite win. So really now it's just about keeping it together out there and hoping that you can make the end of the race in the last 25 minutes here or so. So pretty cool stuff out there so far. little bit of battles here and there. Jake Snedden just running away with it, putting on a clinic at the moment here, looking at our best times at the moment here, and he is he's clear by about 0.3 of a second there. It doesn't look like anybody's really got an answer for Jake today in that hatchback. Looking pretty good with that sim motion livery and everything on it as well. See if maybe Nicholas Johnson and Ian Anderson here have any answer for him at all, or if, you know, unfortunately something befalls Snedden there up at the front, but he's looking pretty clean at the moment, Ron.
I think thus far in this race, the drivers who haven't gotten struck by a falling anvil have been fairly smooth. Thus far, they've been running a fairly solid race. Most of this field spread out for the time being, so they've been just slowly whittling away at the laps, filing away at it, so to speak, with a nail file. If you can pick up a chipped, not chipped tooth, that nail file doesn't really work on that. Trust me, I have tried.
Don't do that.
You pick up but yeah, that would not be doctors advisable at all, or dentists advisable in the slightest. That would be the worst. My advice there of using a nail file on a chipped tooth, I think would probably be the worst racing and dentistry crossover since Jack Miller, a old IndyCar driver back in the 90s, who was odd fellow to say the very least. That does not seem very good at all. I remember last year having to deal with a whole root canal situation, and that was not fun in the slightest. I remember I was on a bunch of antibiotics at that period of time. I made me so drowsy before a broadcast with another broadcaster. Someone said that I sounded like a librarian instead of a broadcaster, which was an interesting comment to be sure, but looking back on that, I can't necessarily say that they were wrong, as we're seeing the field slowly bring us some battles. Johnson and Anderson were battling not terribly long ago. I would still say technically they are still battling at the moment. There also may have been a side-by-side fight with Spolman and Campbell, and also one with Lopez and Justice. So some battles sprinkled, peppered, shall we say, all throughout this field to invoke a little bit of cooking terminology, maybe my culinary arts class back in 10th grade helping me out here.
Yeah, possibly. We'll check out a couple passes here. I think we got, who do we have here? I believe this is Will. We missed a quick pass here. I'm getting by. It looks like he's going to squeeze his way by. A little bit of a strange one there. Just let him by. I wonder if that was lap traffic, or was that just him letting him through? I'm not really sure there, but nonetheless, that was definitely a pass by Will. It looks like we have Nolan Bromer back in the race here as well, getting his way by Wayne Buttermore. And it looks like he's just going to kind of move over and let him through as well there, Ron. So not a whole ton of action on the track right now, but we do actually have Ryan Campbell here. I believe it's Ryan Campbell and Seth Spolman are nice and close to each other here, battling up through T1.
Yeah, there we go. Heading through the braking zone to turn number 2. They single-filed out. Campbell slipping his way up into the 7th position. Spolman now behind in 8th. Gotta say, Chuck Labano now involved in that as well. That was very odd from Ryan Campbell. Looked like his car briefly turned into an absolute hoopty-rod, but the 27 car still running strong at the moment, running in the 7th position. However, that was a very weird disconnect, whatever you want to call it, thingamabobber. A couple of moments ago, a 3-pack of Hyundais running in 7th, 8th, and 9th respectively. Gonna give us a little bit of a fight to talk about, as we're about 2 minutes away from the halfway mark in this race. And you gotta say, it's very odd that you usually don't see this. It's usually one car is the legacy car, the other is more up to date. It's an odd case in the TCRs. You've got the Elantra and the Veloster, which are both part of normal TCR content, as Labano mega sideways, nearly going for a move on Spolman into Forrest elbow. But you've got the Elantra that Labano is running, and the 2 Velosters that Spolman and Campbell are running. Always interesting in these TCR races to see the fact that you've got, of course, different cars. You've got the Audis, you've got the Hyundais, you've got those Hondas running in there as well. But it's also just nice to see the fact you've got 2 separate Hyundais running in this field. And as we see these drivers continue to battle, we may start to see the differences between the likes of that Veloster and the Elantra. They look somewhat similar from the front. However, when you get that side profile shot, they just look like it just looks like a completely different brand of car, let alone a completely different car from the same brand.
Yeah, absolutely, Ron. There's pretty big differences between those cars. I mean, even just visually looking at them, you can tell that the later model there has a bit of a longer wheelbase. You would think that the shorter car would actually do a little bit better around a track like this. It can get turned a little bit more. That being said, you know, it looks like Chuck Labano is wheeling that thing just as good as any other car out there, and he's keeping up with the Velocitors no problem here. So we will have to see sort of how this plays out, and it's always interesting to see how these manufacturers race against each other, and then even more interesting sometimes how a car within the same manufacturer but different model races each other, which is even more rare, really, to be honest. But pretty cool to see it happening here, and it kind of looks to me like they're sort of just biding their time a little bit still. There's quite a bit of time left in this race. You know, as we keep mentioning, you are racing the track around here as much as you're racing the people you're around as well. So there's really no point in making any rash moves or anything to any of the corners. As I say that, he makes a dive up the inside, a beautiful one. Caught him sleeping there a bit, I think, Ron. So totally contradicted me, but I like those kind of contradictions.
Yeah, that was a pretty fun contradiction to have side by side heading through into the cutting. That was some pretty bold stuff. Last second possibly from Labano, but nevertheless he got the move done successfully to slip his way up into 8th. As we're going to see now from Labano's perspective in the number 21 car, this move on the Veloster in front of him, cutting down to the inside, wheeling that Elantra, and getting that move done successfully. That was slick from Labano, the Canadian behind the wheel, the number 21 car. Great move indeed.
Yeah, a great move from my fellow Canadian there for sure. Always good to see the Canadians doing well out there, and it looks like he pretty much just kind of caught him sleeping. That's not really a place where maybe you're expecting one. He sort of left the door wide open there. He knew he had it on the brakes, and he's going to prove to us here, I think, that older model Hyundai can get the job done, and it surely did. So always good to see, and a great move there, nice and clean.
Yeah, it was a fairly slick move from him. Certainly wasn't expecting that as we saw them head their way through into the cutting not terribly long ago, but looking to fight back is Spolman. He may try and go side by side with Labano here heading into the chase. Spolman on that outside line. You've got Labano on the inside. Those drivers going to be battling hard. Look at Will Pierre in the number 7 Honda. He's going to get dicey in this fight. He's currently running in 10th at the moment. Wants to try and build a little bit of a cushion. He wants to run solidly inside the top 10. Nearly, though, running into the back of Seth Spolman, heading down in through the braking zone of turn number 23. But Will Pierre avoiding a near disaster between himself and Spolman. That looked like it was not a move he was expecting to make, but the driver of the number 7 car, that Honda, maybe a little bit better on the brakes. Maybe Spolman just taking it a little bit easy. I'm shocked he kept that car going in a straight line because he was sideways, all sorts of crossed up. I'm curious if we could maybe take a look at another angle of that, Josh, maybe riding on board with him, because I got to imagine he was sawing at that steering wheel.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this caught him out for sure, Ron. He's whoop all of a sudden and just got the pass done. So,
Jesus.
You know, every once in a while when somebody breaks in front of you like that, you kind of get angry about it, but not when you're able to pop out and get the pass done so efficiently there by Will. So good job, and yeah, it looks like he just kind of brake checked a little bit. I'm not, you know, he's probably just trying to stay off the car in front of him and just kind of surprised Will a little bit. I don't think that was intentional at all, but great reflexes on Will and to get the pass done. And I would imagine that we're going to have Spolman trying to reel that back now that he's lost 2 positions in so many laps.
Yeah, I think Spolman going to try and get his nose back to that grindstone and just find his way, any sort of way imaginable to get his way back up into the top 8. Still running inside the top 10, though, with about a 7-second gap to himself and Edgar Sancinelli running in the 11th position as it stands at the moment. However, these drivers giving us a very good fight to talk about. Spolman behind the wheel of that number 42 car. Mega sideways, though, heading through the dipper. That was a nice drift from Spolman. Even though he's had a couple of moments over the past few laps, has lost out on some positions, Spolman still wheeling that car to hell and back.
Yeah, he gathered it up pretty good there, and you know that's going to happen a few times on this track, you know, during a 40-minute race for sure. And it's about you being able to grab it and wrangle it back into shape there, like Seth did, and keep her straight. I don't have a lot of experience in these front-wheel drive cars, but I would imagine that they definitely offer up a bit of a physics challenge coming down the hill like that through there with that front-wheel drive. As we can see here, Labano looks like he's making up some time, Ron. He is on a charge in this Hyundai. It looks like he is definitely looking to move forward a bit more here. Kind of leaving Seth in the dust at the moment as well, so we'll have to see if he can't keep up.
Yeah, leaving him in the dust, leaving him in his coattails, whatever saying you want to use, it's what you can apply to Spolman. He has lost out on a whole lot of time, now about 3 seconds back of the pack in front of him. So Spolman getting shuffled out. It's now a 3-horse race that we've got on our hands. Campbell running in
off the road.
7th, running off the track though, heading through turn number 1. That's going to compromise his run going onto this straightaway. Will Pierre and Labano behind it, maybe going to try and capitalize and make their way up into the 7th position. Campbell, the number 27 Hyundai, Labano in the number 21 Hyundai. They're in the midst. They are the bread of the sandwich, with Will Pierre being the meat in that number 7 Honda, heading their way through turn number 2 right now. Pierre going to remain in the 8th position. I gotta say, Campbell not having as bad of a run as I thought he was going to have, heading down that straightaway between 1 and 2. Holding on to that spot for now, keyword being for now, as we see Labano blink out of existence. The invisibility cloak seemingly to work well for the driver of the number 21 car, but he's back on track for the time being. We'll see if the connection issues that he's suffering from right now gonna play a role in deciding who's going to win this race, as Will Pierre tries an intimidation tactic on Ryan Campbell, turning on his windshield wipers, heading through the top of the hill, but he's closed up that gap massively. That's to head their way out of Skyline into the Dipper now. That gap between Campbell and Pierre has cratered.
Yeah, absolutely, man. When you're in the car, you got to use all the tools you have. If that's the lights and the wipers, then so be it. Throw them on. See if it gets you forward. Ooh, it looked like we were going to have a bit of a dive there, but I think he thought better of it. But yeah, I think what's happening here, you were saying down the straight there, I was really expecting them to catch up to Campbell a little bit more, and they didn't. And that's making me wonder if they're just kind of pacing themselves a little bit. Maybe not trying to put too much pressure until a little closer to the end of the race and just keep their cars clean. I'm not sure here or not, Ron, but it does look like Campbell's fender has a bit of damage on it as well on that side. We did see his wheels do some sort of a googly thing there earlier and super deep into the chase.
Contact!
That was never going to work, I don't think, there, Ron. I don't think that move was ever going to work, but let's go have a quick... Oh, you know what? That didn't register as a pass yet, so we'll have to go and have a look at it in a minute, but that looked way too deep and way too late to me, Ron.
Yeah, I think Pierre kind of running into the same difficulties that he ran into, nearly literally, metaphorically speaking, though, heading into turn number 23 a couple of laps ago when he had that near disaster between himself and I believe it was Labano. But either way, Pierre tried to go for a move. Wasn't a move that he wanted to go for, though. I don't think it was. I think he just outbroke himself by a country mile. Maybe he tried to go for a dive bomb, did the driver of the number 7 car. Either way, it did not work out at all for him. He's now running all the way down in 10th, back behind Spallman. So we may end up seeing a case of deja vu between these drivers. It was 2 cars, then it became 3 cars, then it became 4, then it dropped back down to 3, now it's back down to 2. Who knows, we may end up seeing these drivers vacuum seal themselves back together here.
Yeah, again, Panorama throwing up the hurdles for people. Not an easy track over 40 minutes to just make it all clean and have it all work for you. So we're definitely seeing people fall to the wayside here slowly, and definitely the skill gap is rearing its head as well as the field is sort of spreading out here as well. I think the closest battle we have on track right now is probably this Matt Thompson battle here with Josh Justice. That looks like it's heating up a little bit, but other than that, we're 2, 3, 7, 12, even up to 19 seconds gapping some of the field here. So Panorama rearing its head again, Ron.
Yeah, this track can bite you at the worst possible times. We've already seen that happen in this TCR race. Saw that happen in the Mazdas earlier on. Really, any race that you have around this track, you can have moments like this happen, and then you just feel... You feel a lot of things going on. You feel frustrated with this track. That's kind of a pervasive feeling that a lot of drivers have with this place. You feel so frustrated when something bad happens, as we see Justice having something bad happen to him, heading through Force Elbow. He's now going to be side by side with Thompson, heading onto the Conrad straightaway. Thompson, Justice side by side. Who's going to prevail and get their way back up into 13th place? Looks like it's going to be Thompson for now. However, Justice slipping in behind the driver of the number 99 car, enjoying the draft from the number 23 right in front of him. Will they go side by side into the chase? Looks like Justice going to hold on to that 14th position for now. However, may end up seeing some battling between those two between now and the end of this race, coming up in about 11 minutes time. But the thing with this track is, it can be such a pain in the butt for these drivers. You could be driving around here being like, man, I love it. I'm in such a good mood. Sim racing's great. And you have a small little mistake at the top of the hill, and you break all 4 corners off it, the front wing, the rear wing, both side pods, your rear wing of the car ends up for sale on Craigslist or something like that. Your front bumper ends up all the way in, like, Timbuktu. When that happens, though, as much as you may enjoy driving around this racetrack, you'll be like, I wish I never bought this track. I wish I would never drive around it again. It's a very bad phrase to say. It's like all racing drivers, I feel, have a toxic relationship with this place. You love it when you love it, but you despise it when you hate it. And I think one driver that may be hating is Michelle Squirk. Runs wide coming out of turn number 11, hits the gravel and hits the barrier in the process, as well as the number 75 car having contact. And that was damage as well, Josh. I can see that car was not driving well. Driving like a hoopty rod, hit that killer curb and bang into that concrete barrier. That is some pretty big suspension damage on that race car. She was running decently. Now she's dropping down to 5th as herself and Vo's going to be side by side as there was contact. That was a crash between Anderson and Johnston heading through the cutting. That was a hellacious collision between the two of them. I think I saw a wheel broken off, but either way, that's going to cost both those drivers a lot of time. I think there may have been some lap traffic involved in that as well. Squirt going to follow down in the pits to repair the damage on that race car as we're going to take a look and see this replay of the Ian Anderson incident. Drama with lap traffic, and you can see what in the world was going on there.
Yeah, we are going to have to take another look at that. I think perhaps that was Ryan Camp. No, was it? It was a red car. That was an absolute cluster there. I'm not exactly sure who darted off the road so sharply. Let's see if we can't get another quick look at it here on.
Yeah, let's see that we're following Nicholas Johnson in that number 20 car. Ran off into the grass heading into the corner, sideways snap, and that just causes him to take a one-way trip into that gravel trap and bang into the wall. That was a huge hit for him. So Nicholas Johnson crashing out of this race, hit that grass. I guess that's what got him squirrely into the corner. Not sure why he drove off into the grass, though. I mean, never had a mistake like that happen. I've never seen a mistake like that happen with the driver in any broadcast I've ever done of a race around this track. So that was very bizarre for Johnston. But I'm still trying to figure out what in the world happened to Anderson, because we saw him involved in that. He went off the track. Had some lap traffic involved in that as well. May have been when you could see, I believe that was Wayne Bartermore that he was side by side with, riding on board with Ian Anderson. What in the world?
He got floated by the car beside him there, I believe.
I do not know.
Yep, so it looks to me like what happened is the other car just got a little bit spooked by the first car going off there, I believe. Yeah, so we look at it one more time here, and you can see darts off the road, but he makes a bit of an evasive move, caught the grass, and then just pins him in the side of the door. So unfortunately, that was just a bit of a calamity of errors there. Not something you see, you know, often, like you're saying, Ron, for him to run so unbelievably wide on entry. And then I think what happened probably is he just picked up some dirt and he asked a little too much of that left rear tire, and that was it. He just lost it, and at that speed through that corner, you're never going to catch that snap. And unfortunately, we had some reaction to it that didn't work out so well, so we lost a couple cars there. But yeah, not something you see every day. That was a bit of a strange line through there.
Yeah, that was bizarre. I am genuinely still trying to wrap my head around what happened with that incident, but either way, gotta take some pretty good race cars out of contention. Snedden's now leading this race, 18.5 seconds in front of Vos. Anderson, it's Carrie Anderson, Ian Anderson's wife, inheriting P3 as a result of all of that drama. As we see Carrie Anderson in that number 78 car, there she is, inheriting a podium spot because of the drama that's happened over the past few moments. But either way, a podium is a podium. Certainly not going to turn that down one bit. But that was still, I'm trying to wrap my head around that incident still. There's certain incidents where I feel like my brain is just buffering at the moment. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. So I feel like, for the sake that I don't want my room to fill up with the smoke that occasionally comes out of my ears when I think too hard, I think I may just leave it at that after we take a look at another angle of this incident. You could see the Honda sideways snap through the corner, hits the grass, and just augers straight into the side of the 147 car of Ian Anderson. He then immediately takes a one-way trip into the gravel trap on the outside of the corner. But either way, One Anderson running into some difficulties is going to be a win. Not really a win, a podium spot. Gonna take it as a win for Kerry Anderson in that number 78 car. That Audi still wheeling strong at the moment. And because of that drama, I believe most of the field is pretty spread out. I think Thompson and Sancinelli just went side by side a little bit ago. Pretty big pace differential between those two, so not too surprised as a result of a swaparoo going on between those two drivers right towards the tail end of the top 10. As it stands at the moment, Josh, with about 5 minutes left on the clock, looks like everything has, for lack of a better term, been settled outside of a fight that we may have brewing between Justice, Casey, and Lopez, with 3 cars covered by about a second. Holy cow.
Yep, again, we do have a little pack here forming for sure, but I think for the most part, yep, you're right, Ron, we've kind of spread out a little bit here. And always, you know, you never want to just lay down arms really here at Panorama. You have to definitely hold your guns up till the end and make sure that you beat this track, because it will beat you, as we're seeing here for sure, with some of these drivers kind of taking an exit early in some, you know, unorthodox ways and stuff as well. And that's kind of what Panorama is going to bring you every time you visit here. As we were mentioning earlier, this is one of the harder tracks, and you don't need to be a specialist really around here. You have to become a specialist at Panorama to do well around here for 40 minutes. And we've made a couple specialists here, and I think we've probably lost a couple along the way as well, Ron. So looking pretty good, though, and we do have a bit of a fight here between Casey and Lopez for 12th place. Looks like they're going side by side into the chase here. Let's hope that they can have a little bit more sense not to go quite as wide. And it looks like he's going to clear him no problem here into the chase. So we'll see if we'll get back onto that one in a little bit and see if he can't get that position back. But other than that, this is about the closest battle we have on track here, on.
Yeah, and here it is. Campbell and Pierre running in 5th and 6th at the moment. Neither of these drivers have had a very straightforward road to get here. They were involved in that very close battle involving the likes of Labano and Spolman. But when they got struck by falling anvil, these two were the ones that prevailed, for lack of a better term. I mean, Will Pierre has still been involved in a couple of incidents, had that spin not terribly long ago, but either way, still working out okay for him, running in the 6th position as it stands at the moment. He's only 1 spot away from breaking his way up into the top 5. And, you know, touching back on a storyline that we mentioned, it feels like forever ago when we mentioned this, and it's gotten even more entertaining, for lack of a better term. The Hard Charger award that we always like to keep tabs on, that I have an actual award that we give out to these drivers, just like to keep tabs on it throughout these broadcasts and these races. It was a 2-horse race. It was a tie between John A. Casey and CJ Conklin. Earlier on in the race, those two were up 12 spots respectively, but now it's a 3-horse race in the Hard Charger category. It's Edgar Sancinelli running in the 10th position at the moment. He's up 11 spots. CJ Conklin, who are falling right down the 17th position, he's up 11 spots. John Casey, running in 13th in the number 25 Honda, he's up 11 spots as well. So we've got a 3-horse race going on here. Who's going to be the one to try and make up another spot? Who's going to maybe get the added benefit of some drama befalling a driver in front of them? Who knows? Whole lot left to be decided, with about a lap left to go with less than 2 minutes on the clock.
Yeah, I find that kind of funny. Actually, we got 3 drivers, 11 spots up. Got a little race inside a race going on there, although it looks like I'm not sure any of them really going to have a chance to make that one more spot up, but it is Panorama, and we do have 2 minutes left, so anything can go, and it looks like we're going to get a pass around the outside into the chase. It was actually a great way to do it, because you get the inside into the next corner, and he gets it done nice and clean there. Pretty nice pass there for Will Pierre around Ryan Campbell, who looks like he's kind of been struggling with some damage here for a while, Ron, with that I believe it's the right front tire there. Looks like the fender's just a little bit warped.
And you can see him running wide coming out of the final corner, taking the white flag now. So only one more lap of racing action left for these drivers, albeit they're about 58 seconds back of Jake Snedden, so he's already at the top of the hill. Halfway through the final lap of this race is Snedden. Has been dominant thus far. He kicked the season off about 3 weeks ago with a victory at Road Atlanta, and it's going to continue here at Bathurst. So it's going to be a case of deja vu in the TCR as well. Things were also another case of deja vu in the Mazdas, it's going to be the MX-5 winner of Michelle Squirk winning for the second race in a row. And in the TCR, Jake Sneddon on track to take his second victory of 2 races thus far this season. 30 seconds left on the clock, heading his way down the Conrad straightaway for the final time. He's got 22 seconds in his back pocket to go back to Dylan Vose, the driver of the number 19 Audi, running in the second position. He's made his way up 6 positions in this race of attrition. But unless some sort of major drama befalls Jake Sneddon, which considering he's the media guy for SimMotion, gonna hope if we don't pull off any sort of commentator jinx on the driver of the number 11 Hyundai, he's going to be heading down the small low flat out blast before the final corner, and Jake Sneddon is going to be pretty much entirely uncontested. Started from the pole and is going to take the checkered flag victorious in this TCR race. Jake Sneddon wins it in that Hyundai, and we got a side-by-side fight going on here. A little bit farther in the back between CJ Conklin and Nolan Bromer. Bromer trying to get a move done around the outside into turn number 2. Not going to be successful as these two Hondas battle for P16 at the moment. That's actually P17, my apologies. I had to wait all the way until then to see Dylan Vose take the checkered flag in second. So a big gap separating those drivers after 40 minutes of racing action. Vose going to finish in P2, then we have to wait a little bit more to find Kerry Anderson, who's going to cross the finish line right about now to round at your podium in third. With this side-by-side fight involving Thompson and Spolman, they're going to be battling tooth and nail all the way to the checkered flag. Who's going to prevail in this fight? Who's going to get that P8 spot? Who's going to have bragging rights about who ended up finishing where in this battle? Looks like Thompson's going to have the upper hand coming out of the chase for the final time in this race. Riding on board with Spolman, and look at Sancinelli maybe getting a move done. He's involved in that hard charger fight, so there's a little bit of investment for Sancinelli, but rounding their way onto that start-finish straightaway for the final time. Thompson going to finish this race in 8th, Spolman in 9th, Sancinelli going to round at your top 10. Now I'm keeping my attention to see where the likes of John Casey and CJ Conklin finish, because if they make up one spot, they would be able to usurp Sancinelli, who made up 11 spots from start to finish. Looks like Casey's not going to do it. He also finishes 11 spots up. CJ Conklin, though, he's just lost out on 1 to Nolan Bromer. Heading his way down the Conrad straightaway off into the chase for the final time. That Taco Bell car started this race off with his bell getting rung, heading into the cutting for the first time. However, he's going to prevail in this fight between himself and CJ Conklin. Following Nolan heading into the final corner, the driver of the number 4 car going to prevail in that fight. So it looks like we're going to have a two-person tie in terms of the hard charger award.
Yeah, we got 2-person tie. We do have a guy down 12 positions, but I don't think anybody's really going to get an award for that one. But we do have the 11s. Yeah, we got Casey and Sancinelli there up 11 positions, which is nothing to scoff at, Ron, in a race like this at all. So good for them. And man, did Sneddon ever put on a clinic today, and really unfortunate that we kind of got robbed of our 2, 3, 4, and maybe even 5th place battle there at the end with just a little bit of kind of hairy racing there near the end, Ron. But all in all, great race around here. Most everybody got it across the line, and yeah, it was a great race.
Yeah, these TCR drivers certainly happy that the race wasn't rain affected like it was at Road Atlanta about 3 weeks ago for the opening race of this season. But even under dry conditions, it was still pretty rough going for some of the drivers up and down this 30-car grid that took the start. Not a lot of them, though, finished the race. A lot of them ran into some difficulties. Many of them finished about a lap down, sometimes even more. It'll still be a very good day of racing action here, and we're going to get the results from this TCR race loaded up in just a couple of moments' time. A race which, for the second time this season, is won by Jake Sneddon in the number 11 car. Nearly 23 seconds between Sneddon and Dylan Vose for P1 and P2 in this race. Just an absolute show of force from Jake Sneddon. Kerry Anderson going to round out your podium in third. Then we have Michelle Squirk putting on a pretty good drive tonight, winning the Mazdas earlier on, finishing 4th in the TCR race that we just had. Finishing right behind is going to be Will Pierre. Ryan Campbell finishing in 6th. Chuck Labano finishing in 7th. Matt Thompson in 8th. Seth Spolman in 9th. Edgar Sancinelli going to round out your top 10. Then we have Joshua Justice finishing in 11th. Carlos Lopez Jr. in 12th. John Casey finishing in 13th, Ian Anderson finishing in P14, Jeff Bernard, the Aussie in the number 13 car, going to finish exactly where he started, I believe, in 15th. Miles Crabb going to finish in 16th, Nolan Bromer going to finish down in 17th. Just barely edged out CJ Conklin, who finishes right behind in the 18th position. Tyler Heron, who kicked off the odd things to happen at this TCR race with an incident during the formation lap. He finishes in 19th. Paul Ellis going to round out your top 20. And then after we go through Wayne Buttermore 21st, most of these other drivers were involved in some accidents and did not take the finish of this race either anywhere near the lead lap or not even on the racetrack. Nicholas Johnson finishes in 22nd, Tom Went in 23rd, Joaquin Effinger in 24th, Jason Greider in 25th, Steven Tiska in 26th, Brad Cathcart finishing this race in 27th, Jacob Schilling down in 28th. And riding at the final two cars classified from this TCR race, we have Casey Knight and Mike Key. So that is it for the 30 cars classified from this race. A race which was odd to be sure from start to finish, but pretty exciting as well. And looks like we are going to, I think we'll wait a little bit, get some more drivers waiting in the interview waiting area. Josh, so I'll ask you about the oddness that we just saw from that race.
Yeah, it's fairly typical race around Panorama here. You're going to get, like we said in the beginning, you've got some drivers there who are just wheelmen around here, wheelmen and women, I should say, around here. And then, you have some drivers who just maybe don't gel with this track quite as good, or just it's hard to make that 40 minutes and stay off the wall and make good decisions and so on. And that's kind of the way this place races. You're going to have a bit of a skill gap all the time. We did get well more than half the field, I believe, made it through the race no problem. And even the incidents that we did have there, fairly minor, considering I have seen people pile up in those two corners and just completely, the whole field is gone in one lap sort of thing, and did a pretty good job getting around people there as well. So good race all in all, I think, and we're looking forward to the next one there on.
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty good race. Going to have to wait until December the 18th for the next race of this season. That's going to be 2 days before my 20th birthday. Good Lord. But I think before I have an existential crisis on this broadcast, going to move into some interviews. We got some drivers waiting in the interview waiting area. The first driver that I will be bringing in to have a chat is going to be our race winner of Jake Stendon. Going to drag him into the commentary booth right now to talk about another win from this season. Jake, that looked like a pretty smooth day in the office from our perspective, winning about 23 seconds in front of Dylan Vose in second. So talk us through this race that we just saw at Bathurst.
Not too much to say. I hopped in with about 30 minutes of practice and basically just set fuel load, kind of practiced a little bit, and then practice with the qualifying setup. And I'm very, very familiar with Bathurst, so it was mainly just get in the seat and go.
Seeming like it was just a smooth ride from you from start to finish. I'm going to ask a slightly facetious question here, but I feel like it would still be quite funny to ask and kind of relevant to the other race that we just saw with the attrition that we had. Was there any points with that big gap that he had where you felt slightly compelled to maybe, I don't know, take a look at your email or something like that? Or was it just so hard trying to remain focused and keep that car going in a straight line around a track as unforgiving as this one?
No, it wasn't super smooth sailing. I have, a couple friends in this race that, keep me honest. And any point throughout that race with a little slip up, like Ian, for example, would be on my butt. But I think there were some unfortunate incidents that happened in the race, unfortunately. But yeah, it was if a couple people didn't have incidents, I definitely would have had a little more run for my money.
I still think it was a pretty good showing from you, taking your second victory on this season. Now, it's going to be a little bit until we see Group 1 action return here from the Ray Esports Club Racing League. But then that next racetrack is going to be at VIR on December the 18th. So what are your thoughts heading into that race in about a month's time?
I believe the VIR is going to be GT4.
I don't believe so. At least my notes are maybe deceiving me. Give me one
Oh, are you
second
talking-
here, real quick. For Group 1, this TCR racing.
Oh,
I believe
gotcha.
GT4s, I think, will be. Let me actually pull the schedule up. At least for Group 1, we're going to be running at VIR in about a month's time. So, what are your thoughts into that one?
Depends on what course we're doing. If we're doing full course, like grand course, I think that'll be really interesting, considering just how extensive that track is, and it'd probably be running about 3-minute lap times. A lot of room for errors and a lot of room for mess ups. If it's like South course, I think that would also be equally fun. Lots of dynamic elevation changes and really, really messy corners to make it hard for passing. So I think either way at VIR, it's going to be a pretty interesting race to watch.
At least according to the Google sheet with all the schedule information and all that jazz, it's going to be on the full layout. So I believe that won't be the grand course. That would be an interesting one. We saw that a couple of seasons ago with the other Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, one of the other Esports series. So that's going to be a pretty good one with the Mazdas and TCRs in about a month's time. And considering that you have a clean record thus far this season, I'm sure you're going to have some pretty high hopes into that one. So, Jake, before we let you go and celebrate the second victory on the season, is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Yeah, definitely like to shout out all my friends, especially Carrie and Ian. They're very big supporters for getting me to drive. Always have been, and they're originally ones that really got me going on getting a simulator and driving, because they're the ones that saw potential in me, and to see results is pretty heartwarming and humbly, nice to see. They're very big supporters. I thank them a lot and appreciate them.
Well, it's always nice to have some pretty good supporters, and the results on track certainly going to be helping add that quite a lot. So, Jay, congratulations on the victory. Thank you very much for joining us in the commentary booth, and excited to see you back on the racetrack wherever it is in the not-too-distant future, man. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.
And that right there was Jake Sneddon, the winner here from the TCRs. And now, Josh, I think we got just a little bit more time here for another interview. So would you like to bring in Carrie Anderson?
Yeah, sure. Let's bring in our third place position here. Hey, Carrie, great race out there. Lots of attrition. You definitely made up a bunch of points there. Ended up finishing on the podium. How'd you do it?
I practiced enough to be consistent. I think that's really where I went right today.
Yeah, definitely around here. We were talking in the run-up and so on that this place is definitely a track of attrition and kind of almost need to be a specialist around here to really do well. And you kept the car clean, which a lot of drivers out there didn't do, and you ended up getting a third place out of it. So the better half of the Andersons this afternoon, I'm sure that will be an interesting one to talk about later. I believe we just spoke to Jake Sneddon as well, who's saying that you guys were one of the big reasons he's out here racing with all your support and stuff. So it's great to see that there's some friends amongst drivers and everything here, and everybody's helping each other out. Maybe you can talk about that a little.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ian and I have been racing friends in the local community since 2014, and we got started endurance racing through Chump Car together, and that team originated from the local autocross groups. So in a sense, I'm just continuing to participate in what started out as a community thing and growing it. And it's a beautiful thing to have newer drivers come in who are so hungry and just so far exceed what I even thought was possible. And I think that's been the most beautiful thing about building a local community. And I'm so grateful for our friends, Jake, my husband, and everyone else who's been joining us. We all live within a few miles of each other. So it's truly just an incredible situation and community.
Yeah, that is awesome. It's always really cool here, especially, with the Ray Esports stuff. We love hearing the sort of sim to real life connections, and then the people that we meet and so much and along the way and so on. There's actually a show every Tuesday night there. I'm sure you're tuning into the Racing Line that speaks just about that very topic every Tuesday at about 9 p.m. Eastern, I believe. So today, the track offering up some kind of unique stuff there. Is this, you got a lot of practice around here? Have you raced TCRs here before? Is this one of your favorite tracks? Are you one of those specialists around here, or is this sort of you just kind of brushed up for today?
I have never raced the TCRs here, and up until today, I only had 6 laps in a TCR at this track. But
wow.
One of the biggest inspirations for me was the Jordan Cox race here. If anyone's ever seen it, he was in a EG Honda Civic hatch going up against V8 cars and had one of the most epic passes dropping in from Skyline. And the commentators were just on the edge of the seat saying, somebody get this kid a contract. So while I don't know that I'll ever reach a point where I truly feel satisfied with my own performance, and I think that's the beautiful curse of being a hungry driver, but this track has always been one of my #1 inspirations, and I've done the Bathurst 12-hour for the last 3 years. So I think that really shows in my consistency regardless of what I'm driving. I think understanding how a car flows through the corners and the racing surface, I think that's what makes somebody truly a specialist.
Yeah, that's a really good point actually around here. I don't think I have ever found as much about a track as I have when I do an endurance race with a team around any track. I always leave that track with just a much more intimate knowledge than you will ever get just doing sprint races or even 40-minute races and so on. So great point there as well. I've always said that to even some of the people I'm trying to kind of speed up and stuff, is get in there, do some of that endurance stuff, get out there with the team, and you'll learn these tracks. Just you'll find every little spot on the track that you don't usually find in that 8 or 12 or 10 or even 24 hours sometimes. So some great insight there, Carrie, for sure. And it's great to see that the community's meeting up with each other and having a great time out there. Is there anybody you'd like to thank on the way out?
Absolutely. I want to thank my friends at SimMotion. My sim rig is entirely 100% from them now, and my Sim Magic wheelbase has completely leveled up my driving, and for that it's given me a lot of confidence to get out there and compete with people that used to intimidate me. So I'm really thankful for them, and I'm thankful again for my friends, because they keep it fun and they remind me that I deserve to take up space right alongside them, and know as long as you can keep it tough and fair, you always deserve to get in there, and that really inspires me to just keep going and keep trying to catch up to my friends who are so fast.
Excellent. Yes, being a hungry driver it can be a curse for sure. I like the way you put that for sure. And yeah, the gear definitely can help you get a bit quicker. I've always said, once you can kind of feel the limitations of your gear, it's time to upgrade, and SimMotion's a pretty good place to do that. So thanks a lot today for the race and everything else. And you're looking forward to VIR, our next round. I believe it's in about a month. The next time we'll be in this machinery, and it's at VIR. Do you like that track?
I had actually a blunder, I'm going to admit to you. The last time I raced there, I accidentally took somebody out going into the last corner just before Oak Tree, because I dipped a wheel on the paint on the left. And so I'm hoping to not have a repeat of that. I'm going to practice well, try to, bring my best A game.
Awesome. Right on. Well, great race today, Carrie. We'll be looking forward to seeing you next round, and have a good one. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Joshua.
No problem at all.
And that right there was Carrie Anderson with a pretty awesome interview there. Well done, Josh. But I think that is about all the time that we have in terms of interviews for this broadcast. A broadcast with two pretty intriguing races here at Bathurst. Josh, starting off this show, we said that we were probably going to be mentioning the word unique a lot around this odd circuit in the world of motorsports. Historic with that old school flair, but a lot of new school sections where you can just hammer your competitors and try and put on some really good shows. So, final thoughts before we wrap things up.
Yeah, I think, we sort of wrapped it up in the beginning there on this place is not an easy place to drive around, and that's what we found out tonight. So you're definitely fighting that track as well as the drivers, and we have some wrecked race cars and panels flying over barriers and stuff to prove it here tonight. But nonetheless, it was a great race, and we're looking forward to the next time we see the drivers in this machinery.
Yeah, it's going to be a little while until we see this next Group 1 race. It's going to be on December the 18th at Virginia International Raceway, running on the full circuit for round number 3 for Group number 1 with the Mazdas and the TCRs. And it's going to be a little bit until we see this series return next week. We are going to be taking it off for Thanksgiving, so happy early Thanksgiving to anyone. I know I'm going to be with some family that day. But then we're going to have some more action from the Right Esports Club Racing League running at Circuit of the Americas with the GT4, so 70 minutes of racing action to look forward to there. But between then and now, got a whole lot of action to look forward to here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. The action, it's usually centered around the weekends with the Weekend Warriors action that we have, whether it be the Formula Vs, whether it be the Formula Fords, or whether it be the Spec Racer Fords as well. Got action all around the clock, essentially, here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. That gives you more of a reason to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on any of the racing action. But I think for this broadcast, that will just about do it. So for myself, Ron Maunz, and Josh Wilkie joining me working the comms and the cams, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you all wherever it is in the not too distant future.
We welcome you all to slow motion for this presentation of the Formula V Weekend Warrior Series, and we're about to grab the start in just a few moments' time. It's going to be Megan Overstreet leading them to green with Ladar right alongside. We're waiting for that green flag to come at, and the drivers are now on their way. Some of these drivers may be a little bit more aggressive towards the end of this race, as side by side with Love and DeGassis heading into 5.
Oh, it's close. It's a bit treacherous on the corner. Rex is just singling run wide there, Ron.
Down the running order, Love and Brewster, meanwhile, they have been in the tow and they've seen all these drivers try and do their own maneuvers. They definitely have something cooking behind the wheel of those FV race cars. As Montgomery gets that move done, one's running at the back. Well, not actually running right now, I don't believe, as there's a spinner with Ladar.
Oh no.
Oh, and there's contact as well.
We are live for the first time on slow motion broadcasting with the FF Weekend Warriors. We're at Sebring this weekend. It's going to be a blast. I saw a little bit of rain here in the practice session, but we'll get to that here in 1 second. My name is Adam Thompson. I'm joined in the booth by Randall McGrew.
These three going right at it. We see you're getting really, really squirrely. There.
Oh no!
Some contact. Oh no! Jurg and Antonio, the two Masters leaders, both with issues and now dropping down the order.
There's a dicing through the curbs. Our lead 2. As that's Instaman just slossing it up the inside through McIntyre there. Beautifully done by the Icelandic driver as there's a big incident happened behind somewhere. Gonzaga losing a lot of places back.
Almost touching at that point. They're around there heading into the closing stages of the track. Not quite there yet. Heading through what I'm calling the horseshoe, but let's not get into my drawing skills at this point. Nothing but clear track ahead of them at this point, so no one should be able to interfere in that battle. Side by side, nearly had contact there. That's going to put Kabanka on the inside for this next hairpin. This could be what decides it, and he's gone right on the outside, actually trying to cover off the car. I do wonder if Barry is going to be close enough to potentially slipstream. They've got 2 corners left to go. This is penultimate one now. Barry right up close, 0.3 of a second. I'm not sure it's going to be close enough, 0.2 of a second. He's got to keep his foot on that loud pedal, catches a little bit of a curve, but has Kabanka done it? Barry going to the inside, and Kabanka gets it.
The field in Castro's hands, and he's going immediately. Gets a good jump there over green, and he's pulling away. He is gapping early, even moving over to try to break up any sort of slipstream or help that inside line, making sure green has his hands full coming into T1.
York's chance. Did Jason give Antonio just a little bit of a slow up? It doesn't look like it. Antonio down to the inside. Hopefully going to be able to make this move. Oh, that was close.
Soto both coming very hot with a head of steam. Plava going up to try to move out of the way and give up the slipstream.
Here comes Gilliland.
Slow down. Gilliland coming in, going to try to challenge for this podium. They're going to go too wide.
Oh no!
Oh no! Gilliland and Plava come together. Gilliland's going to come back across the line in 4th place.
You're quite going to get there. There's a little bit of a lockup there from the 46 car. He's gone deep.
Whoa.
I don't know how everybody was able to get through that. That could have been absolutely